Chapter 2352. 5 days passed in the blink of an eye. 51 warships continued to hover in the air above 100 Origin City. The demon commoners in the city were no longer fearful and worried, and they resumed their normal lives. Of course, the commoners were secretly guessing that the power of the foreign city's governor had suddenly increased, and that there would definitely be new plans and actions. During these 5 days, General Long Fu had been resting in the governor's manor and had not shown his face. His strength was unfathomable, and he had already reached the peak of the martial god realm. With Nyu's help, he only needed 4 days to learn the basic words and languages of the human and demon races. He then asked Nyu to find tens of thousands of books, and he flipped through them at an astonishing speed. He only needed to scan with his divine sense to quickly finish reading a book and memorize it. In a short 24 hours he had finished reading tens of thousands of books. He now had a deeper understanding of the Shenwu continent's culture and history. One afternoon, General Long Fu was flipping through books in his study. Footsteps suddenly sounded from outside the door. Nyu quickly entered the study and bowed to General Long Fu. He reported, "General, I sent a letter to Baiming Palace yesterday, and I just received a reply from the great demon saint Ling Xian." General Long Fu closed his eyes and continued reading with his divine sense. He did not even raise his head as he asked, "What's the situation?" Nyu frowned and replied angrily, "I've already explained that the general has led an army here and wishes to discuss important matters with the ancestral demon god. However, Ling Xian is still arrogant and rude, and he actually rejected our visit. He said that there is no connection between the two races, and there is no need for cooperation. Rather than targeting Baiming Mountain, we might as well set our sights elsewhere. After all, Baiming Mountain is just a barren and cold place, while there is a vast and rich world outside." After hearing this, General Long Fu stopped flipping through the books and slowly opened his eyes. The corners of his mouth curled up, revealing a meaningful sneer. You sent him a letter yesterday, but he only replied today. What does this mean?" This was not Ling Xian's decision, but a decision he made after discussing it with the ancestral demon god. Nyu was stunned for a moment before a look of realization appeared on his face. He quickly nodded and said, "I see. Lord General is indeed wise." General Dragon, subduing, ignored his flattery and continued, "On the surface, it seems that the demons have rejected our visit, which is truly arrogant and rude. But this just shows that the demons are afraid of our power and are worried that we will invade Dark North Mountain. Therefore, they expressed that the North Underworld Mountain was not worth our effort and advised us to set our sights elsewhere. This is actually admitting defeat, compromising, and giving in." Nyu nodded his head and said with admiration, "General, you are really brilliant. You didn't even need to look at the letter. You were able to deduce the truth just by looking at the clues. I really admire you. Since the demons have shown weakness, what are we waiting for? Why don't you lead the army to conquer North Underworld Mountain and enslave all the demons?" General Dragon Fu looked at him from the corner of his eyes and said with a playful smile, "Have you forgotten what I said a few days ago? Since you are so eager to attack and occupy the North Underworld Mountain, it seems that you have been greatly humiliated by the devil race. Are you eager to take revenge?" Nyu's body stiffened and he quickly bowed. He smiled and said, "General, please forgive me. I was rash." General Dragon Fu retracted his cold gaze and said with a playful tone, "Ignore the demons for now. Pass down the order to prepare to conquer the 72 cities. That ancestor fiend god has an unfathomable background, but he is able to endure and give in. He is definitely not someone easy to deal with. If our race invades North Underworld Mountain, we will be able to win, but we will have to pay a price. After all, the demons are brave and skilled in battle. They are not afraid of death, and their numbers are as numerous as the hairs on a cow. In the end, what we will get is a barren land. Why bother?" "I understand. I will pass on the order now." Nyu bowed, turned around and left. After Nyu left, General Dragon Fu continued to read his book as if nothing had happened. After a quarter of an hour, Nyu returned and reported respectfully, "Reporting to the general, the army is ready. Please board the leading ship and lead the troops." General Dragon Fu did not even raise his head and said indifferently, "It is just 72 cities. Why do I have to go personally? Pick 40 warships and lead the fleet. Leave 10 warships behind and send them to the various tribes and cities to plunder as much resources as possible." Nyu was stunned and subconsciously asked, General, why do we need to plunder the resources of the 4 southern regions? Are we going to leave North Underworld Mountain? Of course. General Dragon Fu was expressionless. After we take down the 72 cities, that will be our main camp. Remember, don't kill everyone. We still need a large number of slaves. And you nodded and said expectantly, I understand. Please rest assured, General. He then bowed and left the study. As he flew into the sky from the city lord's residence, he could no longer suppress the excitement in his heart and revealed a proud smile. General, you really have a lot of trust in me and think highly of me. This is the first battle of the army's conquest of Shenwu continent. General, you actually let me lead the army and take full control. What an honor. As this thought flashed through his mind, Yuan adjusted his silver armor and cloak, straightening his back even more. Whoosh. He stepped onto the leading warship and strode toward the door. The 4 black-armored guards on both sides bowed respectfully and shouted in unison, Greetings, Deputy General. And Yu pretended to be dignified as he nodded and stepped onto the warship. He waved his hand in high spirits and ordered the entire army to set off. Immediately, 2 black-armored guards released dark red signal arrows that shot into the sky. Boom. The 2 signal arrows exploded in the sky, releasing a dark red light that covered the sky like blood. Immediately after, a total of 40 warships flew across the sky in a grandiose manner and sped toward the south. North Underworld Mountain was adjacent to the 72 cities and was not far from each other. The Heaven Crusher's warships were basically void god treasures, which were commonly known as divine artifacts. Their flight speed was naturally extremely fast and unbelievable. A short 8 hours later, the grandiose fleet arrived within the borders of the 72 cities. In the mountain range in front of the fleet, 2 cities could be vaguely seen. And you stood on the deck at the front of the warship and looked down at the 2 ancient cities in the mountains. His lips curled into a sinister smile. 10 months ago, I personally went to conquer the 72 cities. Just as I was about to succeed, Ji Tianxing ruined my plans and caused me to suffer heavy losses. Now that I've made a comeback, I must take down the 72 cities in one fell swoop and enslave all the commoners. Chapter 2353. Bay City. This city was located in the northernmost part of the 72 cities and was the closest to North Underworld Mountain. 10 months ago, and you had led the demon army to attack. Half of the city had been destroyed, and hundreds of thousands of citizens had died under the blades of the demon race and the foreign races. There were also hundreds of thousands of citizens who had been forced to flee in Bay City. Fortunately, Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao had rushed over to save them and repelled An Yu and the demon race's army, saving in Bay City. For the past 10 months, and Bay City had been recuperating. After such a long period of recuperation, the city that had been reduced to ruins had taken on a new look. The citizens who had fled in all directions had returned to the city and lived a normal life. Everyone thought that in Beijing would be safe and sound for many years to come. But today something unexpected happened. In the originally clear blue sky, a large number of black shadows suddenly appeared and blocked the dazzling sunlight. More than half of Anbei City was shrouded in shadows. A cold and murderous aura scattered down from the sky and enveloped the entire Anbei City. Over 1 million citizens in the city felt that something was amiss. The air seemed to have frozen and the atmosphere in the city was extremely oppressive. Countless cultivators looked up at the sky and quickly saw that the large number of black shadows were actually dozens of pitch-black warships. When An Yu led the demon race's army to attack, he had occupied Anbei City and wanted to use it as a base. His pitch-black warships floated high in the sky and had stayed there for many days. The citizens who had personally experienced that disaster were no stranger to those pitch-black and cold warships. Instantly, countless people revealed looks of horror and shock as they let out cries of despair. Everyone look. It's those black warships again. As expected. It's those warships. Those are the vehicles of the foreign race's devils. Oh my god. There are actually 40 warships? Are my eyes playing tricks on me? Back then that foreign race devil only had 1 warship and it destroyed dozens of cities. Now there are actually 40 warships? It's over. Anbei City is finished. Everyone run. Following waves of exclamations, countless citizens fled in panic and rushed to the various city gates without a care. They had experienced that massacre and were very clear about the terrifying strength and methods of the foreign race's devils. Without a doubt, Beijing's doomsday had arrived. In the blink of an eye, the originally calm Beijing had fallen into chaos and panic. Hundreds of thousands of citizens rushed out of their homes and flooded through the streets and alleys, rushing toward the city gate as if their lives depended on it. The city guards guarding the city walls and city gates were also filled with fear and panic, and they were all in a mess. Fortunately, the commanders of the city guard army were still calm. They quickly stepped forward and took charge of the situation. They killed the deserters cleanly, intimidating all the city guards. Then the city guards closed the city gates and activated the Great City Protection Array. They were ready for battle. The commoners who had rushed out of the city gathered near the city gates, but they were blocked inside the city and could not leave. The commanders of the city guard army shouted loudly to calm the panicking citizens. When the commoners saw the five-colored light shield protecting the entire city, they felt comforted and their emotions became much more stable. The chaotic situation was temporarily under control. Alarms rang out in the city lord's mansion. The city lord personally led many experts and flew into the sky above the city. But as it turned out, it was all in vain. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. Two battleships slowly sailed out from the fleet high in the sky. The two battleships spread out and tilted their bodies, aiming at Beijing. A row of black holes immediately appeared on the long and narrow sides of the battleships. A terrifying bloody light was brewing inside. Within Yu's order, the two battleships activated the array formation at the same time and released a destructive attack. Boom, 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 boom. The cannons of the two battleships spewed out dense blood-colored light pillars that descended from the sky and blasted toward Beijing. A total of 200 blood-colored light pillars shot out like a rain of arrows and instantly blasted the city protection array. The five-colored light shield within a radius of 200 miles was blasted into smithereens, and billions of light shards burst out. Then the blood-colored light pillars blasted into the city and instantly blasted out more than 100 deep holes. At least a few thousand houses and palaces were blasted into powder and disappeared. Around the densely packed deep holes, spiderweb-like ravines split open and dust flew into the air. Countless houses and buildings were affected and collapsed into ruins, leaving only broken fences and dilapidated walls. Of course, there were also hundreds of thousands of cultivators and commoners that were blasted into smithereens on the spot. The earth-shaking explosions lasted for a long time before dissipating. Such destructive power caused all the commoners in the city to be horrified, and they revealed expressions of extreme despair. Including the city lord, his body stiffened as he stood rooted to the ground. His heart turned cold. And Beijing's doomsday had arrived. Faced with such terrifying power, it was difficult for the commoners to have any thoughts of resisting. The two battleships only needed to blast twice more and Beijing would be razed to the ground. The commoners in the city were silent for a full 10 breaths. Then furious roars and cries of despair erupted from the crowd. Right at this moment, in the fleet high in the sky, the leading Black Dragon battleship slowly opened its doors. A tall and sturdy figure in golden armor appeared at the bow of the ship. He was Deputy General Yu. He wore golden armor with a scarlet battle robe draped over his shoulders. He had an awe-inspiring and insufferably arrogant posture. He looked down at Beijing from above with a cold smile on his face. His voice was as loud as a bell as he shouted, "Lowly commoners, I'm back. This time the 72 cities will become my clan's territory. No one can stop me. Those who give up resisting can still keep their lowly lives. Those who don't obey will be killed without mercy." Yu spoke in human language and his voice reverberated throughout the entire city. Although his voice was a little clumsy and his accent was a little strange. However, the 1 million martial artists and common people in the city all heard it loud and clear. Instantly, countless cultivators recognized him and cursed angrily. Yu saw that the people in the city were agitated. The commoners were shouting in grief and indignation as they cursed him hysterically. Therefore he raised his right hand expressionlessly and slapped down at the city below. Boom! A blood-red palm the size of a mountain descended from the sky and slammed into the city, causing a loud explosion that shook the world. Instantly, the area within a 15-kilometer radius was blasted into a huge pit. All the houses and buildings in this area were reduced to dust. Almost 100,000 cultivators and commoners were killed on the spot. Not a single complete corpse was left. The entire Beijing shook violently. Wide ravines split open around the huge pit. As a result, the previously noisy Beijing immediately quietened down. The commoners who were filled with grief and indignation were also silent. They did not dare to make any noise. Chapter 2354. In a short period of an hour, Anbei City had fallen into enemy hands. The city lord and many experts knew that they were powerless to resist. If they angered Anyu, the entire Anbei City would be turned into ashes and all the citizens would die. To Anyu and his large fleet, they only needed to bombard the city twice. In order to protect Anbei City and the 1 million citizens in the city lord and the soldiers chose to surrender. Hence, Anyu sent a battleship into Anbei City to take over the city. The captain of the battleship was a martial god and there were hundreds of martial sage realm warriors under him. Controlling Anbei City was as easy as flipping one's hand. As for how to control the city, there was no need for Anyu to say anything. The captain and the hundreds of warriors knew what to do. After all, they were the executioners who had conquered the universe and slaughtered the various worlds. They had done this countless times and were very familiar with it. After that, Anyu led 39 battleships out of Anbei City in a grandiose manner and headed towards the next city. The closest city to Anbei City was Tong'an City. When Anyu had led the demon race army to attack, he had also taken over this city. 10 months had passed and Tong'an City had been rebuilt. It had returned to its original state. The citizens in the city had also gradually settled down and were recuperating. However, with the arrival of Anyu and his fleet, disaster struck again. Anyu did not waste any time. When he arrived in the sky above Tong'an City, he sent out 2 battleships to bombard the city protecting array. With a few earth-shattering explosions, the city protecting array collapsed on the spot. Tens of thousands of houses and close to 100,000 citizens in the city were turned into ashes on the spot. What happened next was self-evident. The entire process was similar to taking over Anbei City. Anyu's powerful force and his fleet's deterrence made the citizens in the city feel despair. No one had any thoughts of resisting and could only surrender. Just like that, the second city fell. The foreign races did not pay any price and did not suffer any casualties. They easily took over the city. Anyu ordered a battleship to stay behind and take control of Tong'an City. Then he led the fleet to the next city. Following that, similar scenes repeated themselves. As the fleet continued to head south, one city after another was taken over by the foreign races. Anyu had absolute power and there was no need for any schemes. Taking over the various cities would be as easy as blowing off dust. Whenever they encountered any resistance, they could simply bombard the city several times with the warship cannons, destroying half of the city and slaughtering hundreds of thousands of civilians. With such brutal means, of course, he was invincible. In a short span of 5 days, Anyu had taken over 40 cities. On average, each warship occupied a city. Thus, Anyu temporarily stopped his attack. He ordered the captains to take control of the city as soon as possible and turn it into their base camp. After a total of 4 days, the heaven-destroying tribe's army had completely taken control of 40 cities. Anyu then gave another order, leaving only 50 soldiers in each city to guard the city. The captains led the remaining warriors to gather at his location. After the fleet was gathered, Anyu started a new round of expansion and conquest. Disaster reappeared. The remaining 30 or so cities quickly fell under the iron hooves of the Heaven Punishers. Another 5 days passed. The 72 cities were completely taken over by Anyu. During this process, at least 10 million civilians had been killed by the warships and the heaven-destroying tribe's warriors. Every city was riddled with holes, leaving behind a scene of desolation. This region had become tragic and austere, and the air was filled with the smell of blood and slaughter. After the 72 cities fell, Anyu reported the good news to General Dragon Subduing and reported the results of the battle. General Dragon Subduing was very pleased to learn that there were no casualties among the heaven-destroying tribe's warriors, and he praised Anyu. He then instructed Anyu to guard the 72 cities and take complete control of this territory. Anyu naturally obeyed the order. He had long since planned to lead the army to attack Tianzhu Mountain after turning the 72 cities into his base camp. He had long wanted to find Ji Tianxing for revenge. Northwest of Shenwu Continent, within the borders of Heaven's End Divine Nation. This divine nation, which was located between the void and the 5 elements world, had always been calm and full of spirit qi. This divine nation was like a small world that was isolated from the rest of the world, an otherworldly residence. No matter what happened on Shinwu continent, this place would not be affected. Early in the morning, warm sunlight shone on the ground, making the divine palace even more dazzling and majestic. Suddenly, in a secret chamber in the depths of the divine palace, there was a muffled bang. Boom. Following the sound, the entire divine palace began to tremble. Immediately after, a dazzling golden pillar of light soared into the sky from within the divine palace. The golden pillar was tens of thousands of meters tall and dozens of kilometers thick, and it was extremely dazzling. The pillar of light stood between the heavens and the earth, as if it were connected to the divine palace and the heavens. It emitted a sacred and dignified aura. An even more inconceivable scene appeared. 6 dark golden dragon phantoms that were thousands of meters long circled around the pillar of light, emitting earth-shattering dragon roars. Such a frightening vision of heaven and earth immediately alarmed the entire divine palace and spread across half of the divine kingdom. Within the divine palace, there were thousands of guards, maids, and powerhouses, as well as a few divine sons and daughters. Everyone was awakened by the commotion. Everyone looked up at the sky and saw the sacred scene of 6 dragons circling the pillar. They were all shocked and exclaimed in surprise. Heavens! What kind of scene is that? It's actually so sacred and dignified. What a powerful divine force aura. It's like a god has descended. This is a worldly phenomenon, the most sacred and honorable worldly phenomenon. I understand now. It must be the Divine Master's divine art that caused such a shocking scene. Has the Divine Master finally cultivated a divine art and broken through? This is a blessing for the divine nation, a blessing for the world. It's been 300 years. Is the Divine Master finally coming out of seclusion? Similar exclamations and discussions could be heard throughout the divine palace. Everyone was ecstatic and their bright eyes were filled with anticipation. The divine sons and daughters were especially proud as they hurried to the secret room where martial god Tianju was in seclusion. Although Tianju Divine Nation was the leader of the 3 divine nations, it was the most powerful force. However, in recent years Tianju Divine Nation had suffered many setbacks, and its reputation and power had been constantly weakening. A few months ago the eldest divine son Yuanzhen Yi Lushui and a few divine emperors had been killed by Ji Tianxing. This matter had spread throughout the world, causing Tianju Divine Nation's power to plummet, and its reputation was damaged and humiliated. Everyone held their breaths in their hearts. They had endured humiliation for a few months just for this day. Everyone knew that once martial god Tianju cultivated a divine art, he would be able to restore Tianju Divine Nation's prestige after coming out of seclusion. Chapter 2355. The 6 dragons winding around the pillar phenomenon lasted for 2 whole hours. When the pillar of light and the golden dragon dissipated, the sky was covered by endless rays of light. The 5-colored light was both real and illusory. It contained a vast and mighty divine power aura that nourished the entire divine kingdom. Thus, the god kingdom was as warm as spring and hundreds of flowers bloomed. Many warriors and spiritual beasts were baptized by the divine power and their bodies evolved and transformed. Some warriors and spiritual beasts even broke through bottlenecks and became more powerful. As a result, the divine kingdom was in a state of jubilation. Everyone was cheering excitedly. The 5-colored light lasted for 5 days and 5 nights before disappearing. On the morning of the 6th day, outside a secret room in the depths of the god palace, 5 warriors wearing luxurious clothes and extraordinary auras stood respectfully in the passage and waited patiently. One of them was a middle-aged man wearing golden armor and had a muscular body. He was Lu Jin, the new commander of the god army and martial god Tianju's closest confidant. The other 4 warriors were 2 pairs of young men and women. They wore luxurious golden robes and long dresses and wore jeweled crowns. These 4 noble young men and women were martial god Tianju's children. Even though their talents and aptitudes were considered 1 in 1,000 martial arts geniuses, compared to Yuan Chong and Yuan Zhen, they were overshadowed and ordinary. For so many years, the 4 divine sons and divine daughters had lived comfortably in the god kingdom and grew up quietly. Now that Yuan Chong and Yuan Zhen were dead, only the 4 of them were left. Thus, they felt that their chance had come and wanted to win martial god Tianju's favor when he came out of seclusion. If they could win martial god Tianju's favor, they would receive special training and guidance. In the future they might be able to reach Yuanchong and Yuanzhen's heights. Just as everyone had their own thoughts, the door to the secret room opened. Whoosh! As the tall stone door opened to both sides, a dazzling golden light gushed out from the secret chamber. The overwhelming divine power made the 4 divine princes and divine ladies tremble. They found it difficult to breathe and even staggered a little. Only Lu Jin, who was the strongest among them, was barely able to withstand the impact of the divine power and stood still. A tall golden figure walked out of the golden light and arrived at the door of the secret chamber. This was a middle-aged man with a resolute face and a sacred and dignified aura. He had a dignified appearance and his eyes were as deep as the void. He wore a golden robe with flying dragons and a golden crown with a coiled dragon on his head. It was martial god Tianju. His entire body was shrouded in a faint golden light, which vaguely formed the projection of a golden dragon that was circling around him. Behind him, there was a ball of light mixed with gold and silver, shining brightly. Upon seeing martial god Tianjue, Lu Jin and the 4 divine sons and divine daughters bowed respectfully and said in unison, "Welcome back, Divine Master." "Welcome back, Lord Father." Everyone's faces were filled with joy, and their voices were filled with excitement. Martial god Tianju wore a gentle expression and a gratified smile hung at the corner of his lips. Obviously he had gained a lot from his seclusion this time. As soon as he came out of seclusion he saw everyone welcoming him, so he was in an extremely good mood. "Rise everyone." Martial god Tianju raised his sleeves, indicating for everyone to rise. Lu Jin hurriedly cupped his hands and said, "Lord Divine Master, you have cultivated bitterly for 300 years. Now that you have achieved great success, you have triggered the phenomenon of 6 dragons circling the pillar, and the multicolored light has not dissipated for several days. This is a rare phenomenon, and it is an auspicious omen that will bless the world. Lord Divine Master, I have already ordered people to spread the news. Now the entire Divine Kingdom has received the news. Billions of people are wild with excitement and joy, and they worship you to the extreme." Martial god Tianju looked at him deeply and nodded slightly. You have done well and you have received my approval. In recent years the situation in Shenwu continent has changed, and the Divine Kingdom has experienced many storms. Now the people are in a state of panic and many rumors have been spreading. At this time the people will know that I have come out of seclusion and that I have achieved great success. This will definitely pacify the people." He then looked at the 4 divine sons and divine daughters and said calmly, "The 4 of you, what are you doing here instead of cultivating in seclusion and increasing your strength?" Among the 4, the slightly older golden-robed youth was the 2nd divine son. He cupped his hands and explained, "Father, you have been cultivating in seclusion for 300 years. Now you have finally achieved great success and successfully broken through to the 6th stage. This is a joyous occasion. Your son, brothers and sisters have received this good news, so of course we came to welcome you. Father, don't worry. After this matter is over, your son and the rest will go back and cultivate diligently. We will not slack off." Martial god Tianju saw that the 2nd divine son was calm and had the bearing of a general. He felt slightly comforted and nodded. "I am very pleased that you are so filial." The thin youth standing behind the 2nd divine son was the 3rd divine son. He had an indignant expression and said to martial god Tianju, "Father, while you were cultivating in seclusion, the Luoshui Divine Kingdom and the Boundless Divine Kingdom were very complacent. They forgot about your supreme divine might and dared to compete with our Tianju Divine Kingdom. Especially that Ji Tianxing, he was unpardonably evil and had committed a heinous crime. Father, you must kill that bastard with your own hands and tear him into pieces to avenge 4th brother and big brother." Martial god Tianju immediately frowned when he heard the 3rd divine son's words. His expression became a little gloomy. The 2nd divine son observed his expression and hurriedly glared at the 3rd divine son. He said in a dignified tone, "Third brother, today is the joyous day that Father has come out of seclusion. How can you mention this? Father knows clearly what happened before. He must have his own ideas and plans. Why do you need to remind him?" The 3rd divine son was very unhappy when he saw his 2nd brother scolding him. He wanted to refute. Martial god Tianju waved his hand to stop him and said with a cold expression, "Third brother is right. Luo Shui and Boundless Divine Kingdom are a little complacent and have forgotten the lesson I taught them. However, the one who deserves to die 10,000 deaths and the one I hate the most is Ji Tianxing. Not only did he kill Yuan Zhen and Yuan Chong, but he also killed Yi Lushui, Qin Zheng, and a few divine emperors. He caused the decline of the martial saints in our country. If I don't crush Ji Tianxing's bones and scatter his ashes, how can I let it go? The second divine son nodded to show his agreement and said with a worried expression, Father, of course, we must make him pay 100-fold for such a deep blood feud. However, everyone knows that martial god Luo Shui is protecting Ji Tianxing in every possible way. If you kill Ji Tianxing personally, martial god Luo Shui will definitely stop you. At that time, you will inevitably have a great battle with her. The two divine kingdoms will probably go to war because of this. Martial god Tianju sneered and said in a cold voice, So what? I have already sworn that I will kill Ji Tianxing no matter what. Even the heavens can't save him. Chapter 2356. Martial god Tianju's tone was overbearing and tyrannical. Lu Jin, the four godsons and the goddesses were all intimidated by his domineering aura. Everyone was filled with respect. Their hearts were filled with awe, and there was also a trace of anticipation. Lu Jin was the best at figuring out the intentions of his superiors, so he quickly echoed, Ji Tianxing has committed a heinous crime. Of course he will die without a doubt. Even if martial god Luo Shui wants to protect him, it's useless. If he angers the master god, he'll kill her as well. Anyway, the master god has already mastered his divine arts and is now the absolute leader of the three martial gods. No one in the entire Shenwu continent is your match. The second godson nodded in agreement and said expectantly, If father kills Luo Shui, then the vast territory of Luo Shui Divine Kingdom will belong to our country. But if that's the case, father won't be far from unifying the entire Shenwu continent. The other three godsons and goddesses also praised martial god Tianju, praising him to the skies. After a long while, everyone quieted down. Martial god Tianju said with a dignified expression, You all can leave first. I've just come out of seclusion and have many matters to attend to. Now that the Shenwu Divine Kingdom's talents have withered, there are many things that I need to do personally. The second and third godsons took the opportunity to step forward at the same time. They cupped their hands and bowed. Your sons are willing to share your worries and solve your problems, father. Martial god Tianju glanced at them and said indifferently, Well, Yuan Zhen and Yuan Chong are no longer here. You should grow up and strive to be independent as soon as possible. From now on, the two of you will follow Lu Jin and learn how to manage the Shenwu Divine Kingdom's affairs. The two godsons were overjoyed and quickly bowed to express their gratitude to martial god Tianju. Martial god Tianju did not waste any more time and stepped through the passage to the study. Lu Jin and the other godsons and goddesses also left one after another, each busy with their own affairs. Over the next few days, martial god Tianju stayed in the palace, reviewing the mountain of memorials and letters and managing the Shenwu Divine Kingdom's affairs. The two godsons also followed Lu Jin, learning how to manage the kingdom's affairs while using their own schemes and methods to fight for power. Unknowingly, 8 days had passed. Martial god Tianju had finally finished handling the kingdom's affairs. For a long time in the future, the heaven and divine nation would be at peace. He didn't need to worry about it. On the morning of the 9th day, he left the divine kingdom alone and rushed towards the Pillar of Heaven's mountains. This time he wanted to personally kill his way to Tianju Mountain and behead Ji Tianxing. With his strength at LV6 martial god realm and the power of the three divine weapons, killing Ji Tianxing would be a piece of cake. No one could stop him. Meanwhile, at the peak of the Pillar of Heaven's mountains, a few days ago, Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao ended their closed-door training. However, the two of them cultivated for a few more days in the secret chamber to consolidate their martial arts foundation. After a few months of bitter cultivation, their strength had increased greatly, and their battle prowess had soared by many times. Ji Tianxing had long reached the rank 7 martial sage realm. Now that his powers were vigorous and his foundation was solid, he was not far from the rank 8 martial sage realm. Not only had Yun Yao recovered from her injuries, but she had also refined the shadowless dual swords and the godly armor. Moreover, her strength had also broken through and she had successfully reached the rank 7 martial sage realm. When the sun rose, the couple ended their cultivation at the same time and opened their eyes. The two of them looked at each other and left the secret chamber at the same time. We have been in closed-door training for so long. I wonder if there have been any changes in the Pillar of Heaven's mountains? It has only been a few months. Even if there have been any changes, it would not have been much. The two of them talked softly as they walked towards the room where they were staying. At that moment, a guard at the entrance of the passageway suddenly stopped the two of them. The guard knelt down respectfully and reported, "Welcome, young Master Ji and Madam Ji. The Yellow Dragon Grand Deity has instructed me that he has urgent news to report to young Master Ji immediately. Please wait for a moment, young Master Ji. I will inform the Grand Deity now." Upon hearing the news, Ji Tianxing immediately frowned and said solemnly, "Urgent news? There is no need to inform him. I will look for him now." After saying that, Ji Tianxing quickly left with Yun Yao and rushed towards the Huanglong Daoist study room. In the elegant and quiet study room, the Huanglong Daoist was sitting in front of the study table. He held a memorial in his hands and stared at it intently. His expression was a little ugly. He stared at the memorial for a long time without moving his gaze away. His white brows furrowed tightly and there was a look of worry between his brows. Upon seeing this, Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao stepped into the study room and asked, "Huanglong, what happened?" The Huanglong Daoist, who was deep in thought, was instantly awakened. He immediately regained his senses and hurriedly stood up and bowed respectfully. He said respectfully, "Disciple Huanglong welcomes Master and Madam Ji." Ji Tianxing waved his hand and said sternly, "There is no need to be so polite. Let's talk about serious matters first. Is the Pillar of Heaven's mountains in danger? Why are you so worried?" The Huanglong Daoist shook his head and then nodded. He said in a low voice, "Master, just 10 days ago I received news from the scouts. And you has appeared again." He led a large group of strange-looking black battleships into the 72 cities and started a massacre in each of the cities. In just a few days, and you led the mutated tribe experts to invade more than 40 cities. Now the remaining 30 cities have fallen into Yu's hands. The sudden news made Ji Tianxing's expression change. He furrowed his brows tightly. Yu has made a comeback? He even brought a large group of black battleships with him? The Huanglong Daoist nodded and said solemnly, "That's right. The scouts at the front line saw it with their own eyes. There is no falsehood. Master Yu is a martial god expert. He is very powerful. Now he has brought so many battleships and villains with him, and he has quickly taken over the 72 cities. This news has already spread throughout the Shenwu continent, and everyone knows about it now. Master, if I may be so bold as to guess, Yu definitely wants to take over the 72 cities and turn them into his own territory. Their next target will definitely be our Pillar of Heaven's mountains." Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao suddenly understood. No wonder the Huanglong Daoist looked so worried. Ji Tianxing pondered for a moment and guessed the reason. He could not help but reveal a face full of hatred and killing intent. "That damned Yu. We were all deceived by him. That sinister and despicable bastard. No wonder he has been so low-key for the past few months. It turns out that he has been lying in wait. Aside from him and his black-armored guards, there is also the Heaven Punisher's fleet in outer space. If I am not wrong, he must have discovered the Five Elements world by chance. Since he could not take over it, he must have sent a message to the fleet. Now, a large group of battleships and powerhouses from the Heaven Punishers have arrived at the Five Elements world. With their strength, they are naturally invincible. Against a power like the 72 cities, they can easily destroy them." Chapter 2357. Back when Yu had led the black-armored guards on a killing spree, Ji Tianxing had been worried about whether Yu had reinforcements or helpers. However, in the following year, no new foreign race powerhouses appeared. Ji Tianxing dispelled this worry. He only wanted to increase his strength as quickly as possible so that he could kill Yu as soon as possible and get rid of this scourge. However, he had just come out of seclusion when he heard this bad news. It was only now that he realized that Yu had reinforcements, and that there were quite a few of them. "Huanglong, how many warships does Yu have in total?" Ji Tianxing looked at Huanglong Daoist with a serious expression and asked in a deep voice. Huanglong Daoist thought for a moment and replied uncertainly, "Our scouts don't dare to get close to the fleet. They can only observe from afar and gather information from the commoners. According to the scouts, there are no less than 30 warships, but there shouldn't be more than 50 of them either." When he heard this, Ji Tianxing's pupils shrank, and a look of shock flashed across his eyes. All of a sudden there are so many battleships. According to the personnel of Inyu's worship, each worship has a martial god captain and over 100 martial sage warriors and guards. If that's the case, doesn't that mean that he has 3,000 to 4,000 martial sages and over 30 martial gods? Hiss. Huanglong Daoist was stunned on the spot. His body stiffened and he couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. Yun Yao's body also trembled and her expression became extremely serious. She muttered to herself, 3,000 to 4,000 martial sages and over 30 martial gods? That's 10 times the number of powerhouses on Shenwu continent. This is too exaggerated. When she thought of this, she looked at Ji Tianxing with a burning gaze and asked, Tianxing, could you have made a mistake in your estimation? If Inyu really has such a powerful force, then not only would he be able to flatten Shenwu continent, but he would also be able to rule the entire Five Elements realm. Ji Tianxing nodded and replied with a cold expression, I also hope that I have overestimated them. Otherwise, the Five Elements world will welcome a calamity of destruction. Huanglong Daoist finally recovered from the shock and asked worriedly, Master, 72 cities have fallen, and it is said that they have become the headquarters of the alien race. We are the closest to the 72 cities and we can be invaded at any time. Over the past few days, the disciples had sent out most of their men to the northern region to defend with all their might. What else do we need to do? Ji Tianxing weighed the pros and cons and waved his hand. If Inyu really leads the fleet to attack the Pillar of Heaven's mountains, those ordinary martial artists will not be of any use, they will all become cannon fodder. The best defense is actually offense. Yun Yao had already guessed his intention. She nodded and said, You mean instead of waiting for death, why don't we take the initiative to attack? Just like last time, we will sneak into the 72 cities and assassinate the experts under Inyu's command. We will weaken his forces as much as possible. Ji Tianxing nodded slightly and said, That's right, that's right. In addition to assassinating non-humankind experts, we also need to gather information. We need to know the actual situation of Inyu, how many battleships and how many martial sages he has under his command. Huanglong Daoist quickly advised, Master, when you and your wife sneaked into the 72 cities to assassinate Inyu and his warriors, I did not object. That was because the situation at that time was not too bad. However, today is different. Inyu's forces are too terrifying. If you go there recklessly, you will be like a lamb in a tiger's den. Ji Tianxing looked at him calmly and asked, If we don't take the initiative to attack, what else can we do? Wait for death? Or run away? This. Huanglong Daoist fell silent and did not know how to answer. It was impossible for them to wait for death. It was even more impossible for them to run away. The mighty Kenshin had not even seen the alien race's fleet. They had only heard that the 72 cities had fallen and they had already run away in fear. This was the biggest joke in the world. Seeing that Huanglong Daoist was no longer trying to persuade him, Ji Tianxing said in a dignified tone, Huanglong, now that the alien race has invaded, Shenwu continent will definitely fall into chaos. We need to be fully prepared. Master and your wife will work together to sneak into the 72 cities to gather information and assassinate non-humankind powerhouses. You will stay at Tianzhu Mountain and gather as many disciples as possible. Tidy up the treasury and cultivation resources. Perhaps we will really have to give up on Tianzhu Mountain soon. Huanglong Daoist was stunned and revealed an expression of disbelief. He hesitated for a moment before asking, Master, the situation shouldn't be that bad, right? Ji Tianxing did not answer. Huanglong Daoist's heart grew heavier and he did not say anything else. He bowed and said, Master, I understand what to do. Ji Tianxing nodded and left the study with Yun Yao. The two returned to their residence and packed up their things, preparing to head to the 72 cities. An hour later, the two of them were ready and left the Pillar of Heaven Palace together. However, the two stepped into the training hall and were about to fly up into the sky. A crack suddenly appeared in the sky above the training hall, and a dazzling icy blue light shone from it. In the next moment, a slim and graceful figure walked out of the crack. This graceful and beautiful woman with a noble and holy aura was martial god Luo Shui. She stepped across the sky and landed in front of Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao. When the two saw her, they hurriedly greeted her. Greetings, Divine Master. Greetings, Divine Master Luo Shui. After bowing, Yun Yao took the initiative to ask, Divine Master, weren't you cultivating in your divine kingdom? Why have you suddenly come to Tianzhu Mountain? Ji Tianqing did not speak, but he looked at Luo Shui with a puzzled expression. Luo Shui's clear eyes revealed a serious expression and she said in a low voice, I have indeed been cultivating in my divine kingdom for the past few months. However, 8 days ago I suddenly sensed a strange phenomenon in the Tianzhu divine kingdom. In less than 2 days news came from the Tianzhu divine kingdom. That guy has indeed come out of seclusion. Moreover, he has already mastered the revolving star passage divine technique, and his strength has increased by another level. Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao were stunned when they heard the news. The two looked at each other and their expressions became serious. Martial god Tianzhu has come out of seclusion? He has indeed mastered the divine technique and he has increased by another level. Ji Tianqing frowned and murmured with a worried expression, blessings never come in pairs and misfortunes never come singly. I just heard bad news and now there is bad news. He knew very well what it meant for martial god Tianzhu to come out of seclusion. Yun Yao suppressed her worries and bowed to Luo Shui saying, Thank you for the reminder, Divine Master. We will be extra careful and be on guard against martial god Tianzhu's revenge. Luo Shui shook her head calmly and said in a low voice, No need to be on guard. Yun Yao was stunned and asked in confusion, What do you mean? Chapter 2358. Yun Yao's expression changed when she heard Luo Shui's words. Ji Tianqing also looked up at the sky in the west. His expression was as cold as ice. He also sensed a sacred aura rapidly approaching from the sky 30,000 zhang above the ground. In the next moment the calm sky suddenly shattered. Crack. A huge crack appeared in the sky. Dazzling golden light surged out from the crack. It was like the sun illuminating the world. Swoosh. A tall and burly figure stepped out from the crack. It was a man in a golden robe who was thousands of feet tall. He was as huge as a mountain. He looked majestic. His eyes were like lightning. 6 golden dragon shadows surrounded his body. He exuded the domineering aura of a king. He crossed dozens of miles in one step. In just 3 steps he arrived at the peak of Sky Pillar Mountain and stood above the dojo. He looked down at Sky Pillar Mountain from above. His gaze locked onto Ji Tianqing, Yun Yao and Luo Shui on the dojo. Luo Shui, I expected that you would protect Ji Tianqing with your life. I didn't expect that I would be right. I haven't arrived yet and you've arrived first. The golden-robed giant smirked. He sneered in a mocking tone. Luo Shui looked up at him and said expressionlessly, Tianzhu, ever since I came out of seclusion I've set up a few formations to monitor your movements. I know exactly when you come out of seclusion and when you leave the kingdom. I know exactly what you want to do. How can I let you do as you wish? Martial god Tianzhu nodded and said with a sinister smile, I see. No wonder you could grasp my movements and arrive here in advance. However, it's useless even if you're here. You know very well that I must kill Ji Tianqing today. No one can stop me. Since we've known each other for 3,000 years, I'll give you one last chance. This is a grudge between me and Ji Tianqing. It's none of your business. Leave now and I'll let bygones be bygones. Not only did Luo Shui not back down, he stepped into the sky, his right hand wielding the reverse water sword. She looked at martial god Tianqing fearlessly and sneered, You should know that no matter what, I will not sit by and watch you deal with Tianqing. If you want to kill him, you'll have to step over my dead body. Martial god Tianzhu frowned. He was so angry that the veins on his forehead bulged. He shouted angrily, Luo Shui, if you're so stubborn, don't blame me for being merciless. Luo Shui revealed a cold smirk as he spoke out in a playful tone, You've merely broken through to the 6th stage realm and it actually made you so arrogant and conceited. Do you think that you can easily defeat me just because your cultivation level is higher than mine? Today it's still unknown who will live and who will die. Martial god Tianzhu's face was filled with anger as he shouted in a thunderous voice, Since you don't believe me, I will show you. As soon as his voice fell, he suddenly raised his fists and blasted out 2 fists as fast as lightning. The mountain-sized golden fist glows were like 2 suns descending from the sky as they smashed towards the Luo Shui. The dazzling golden light and scorching aura immediately enveloped the entire pillar of heaven's mountain. Luo Shui was fearless. His left hand formed a sword gesture while his right hand waved the reverse water sword as he faced the attack head-on. Virtuous as water. The reverse water sword released an icy blue brilliance that shot up to the sky as it instantly slashed out 36 icy blue sword glows towards the two golden fist shadows. The fist glows and sword glows collided, and instantly there was a loud boom boom boom. Both of them collapsed at the same time, turning into light fragments that covered the sky and earth as they burst out in all directions. The deafening loud sound reverberated through a radius of 3,000 miles as it shook the surrounding mountains and rivers. The extremely violent shock wave hit the Pillar of Heaven's mountain, causing the 10,000 feet tall mountain to shake as numerous crushed stones collapsed. The ground around the Pillar of Heaven's mountain trembled violently as densely packed ravines were formed. Dozens of mountain peaks cracked or collapsed from the tremors, turning into ruins. Even if it was just the aftermath of a battle between martial god experts, it was enough to destroy the heavens and earth. Luckily, the Pillar of Heaven's mountain was protected by the heavenly dome array. A colorful light barrier enveloped the entire mountain peak. There were also 108 mountain peaks that formed the Big Dipper star Luo and the Earth Fiend Spirit Prey array that also protected the Pillar of Heaven's mountain. The destructive shock wave was blocked by the protective mountain array and was quickly absorbed and dissolved. However, such an earth-shattering commotion still alarmed everyone in the Pillar of Heaven's mountain. Countless disciples were shocked as they ran out in a panic to see what had happened. Even Huang Long and a few elders flew to the dojo as they looked at martial god Tianju in the sky. Ji Tianxing immediately gave an order to Huang Long as he shouted in a dignified tone. Huang Long, quickly gather the elders, deacons and disciples to jointly maintain the protective mountain array. No matter what, we must protect the foundation of the Pillar of Heaven's mountain. Huang Long acknowledged the order and hurriedly passed down the order to quickly assign tasks. After a while, he and a few elders were separated and arranged in a formation on the dojo. The deacons and disciples were also divided into 9 groups and stood separately on the dojo. Everyone was focused on channeling their arts to inject majestic energy into the heavenly dome array to increase the power of the protective mountain array. Naturally, the effect was immediate. The colorful light barrier that enveloped the entire mountain peak suddenly became dazzling and almost doubled in thickness. At this time, Luo Shui rushed up to the sky again and waved her sword at martial god Tianju. I thought you had really improved by leaps and bounds after you had mastered the divine skill. The result is so disappointing. Martial god Tianju was infuriated by her. With a hideous smile, he took out a huge sword that could split the heavens. His body emitted a golden light that shot into the sky and formed a pair of huge wings. That was just the appetizer. Now it's the real beginning. As he spoke, martial god Tianju held the huge sword with both hands and slashed down a sword light that was tens of thousands of feet long. Before the sword light arrived, the destructive and violent sword intent and invisible divine aura had already enveloped a radius of 1,000 miles. Luo Shui's expression was solemn as her body turned into a ball of icy blue light and instantly stabbed out 365 rays of icy blue sword light. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. The icy blue sword light blotted out the sky and bloomed in the sky. It was as dazzling as a fairy scattering flowers. Bam bam bam. The huge golden sword that could split the heavens and earth slashed down and instantly shattered countless icy blue sword light, creating a loud explosion that shook the universe. In the blink of an eye, the icy blue sword light that filled the sky was destroyed. There were only 40 or so rays of sword light left. Just as they were about to hit martial god Tianju, he waved his left hand and created a golden and silver vortex. Stellar transposition. As martial god Tianju roared angrily, the vortex swallowed the icy blue sword light and disappeared without a trace. Luo Shui's ultimate sword technique had been easily neutralized by him. At the same time, the huge golden sword that could split the heavens and earth slashed down on Luo Shui. Bam! Although the power of the huge sword had been weakened by 70%. Luo Shui also used the reverse water divine sword to block the attack of the huge sword. Chapter 2359. Bam! The Luo River slammed into the 5-colored light barrier, creating a loud explosion. The protective array within a few hundred miles shook violently, creating layers of ripples. However, she had neutralized the powerful impact and was not injured. At this moment, Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao also rushed into the sky and attacked martial god Tianju together. If the heavens want to destroy a man, they must first make him mad. Tianju, you are not far from death. Ji Tianxing's face was cold as he shouted in a low voice. He formed a sword seal with his left hand and waved the sword of burial of heaven with his right hand, creating a sky full of cold stars. Yun Yao put on her divine armor and was covered in dark golden armor. She held the shadowless sword with both hands and slashed out sword shadows with all her might. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Hundreds of starry sword lights flashed in the sky and charged at martial god Tianju without any form or trace. Seeing this, martial god Tianju smirked and sneered. "This is the divine weapon you obtained in the illusory void secret realm? That was originally mine, and it will be returned to its rightful owner soon." As he spoke, his left palm struck out with a profound technique, forming a seal that blotted out the sky and covered the sun. Whoosh! A golden and silver hurricane with a radius of 100 miles instantly appeared in front of him. Ji Tianxing's sword lights and Yun Yao's shadowless sword were blocked by the hurricane. All the sword lights were swallowed by the hurricane and shattered into a torrent of stars. In the next moment, a torrent of stars surged out of martial god Tianju's right hand. With the enhancement of the divine sword, it turned into 12 giant starry swords and slashed down. He did not use his divine power at all. Instead, he used Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao's power to deal with them. This was one of the effects of the stellar shift. Borrowing power to fight power. Give them a taste of their own medicine and give them a taste of their own medicine. Bam, bam, bam. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao couldn't dodge in time and were struck by the two stellar swords on the spot, flying backward. Yun Yao was protected by the godly armor, so she was safe. Ji Tianxing, on the other hand, could only use his sword body to resist the attack. A long and narrow wound was left on his chest, and blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth. However, he didn't care about his injuries at all. He immediately soared into the sky and charged towards martial god Tianju. Celestial dragon tyrant body. He let out an angry roar as his entire body emitted a dazzling golden light. In an instant he turned into a 300-meter-tall giant. The burial of heaven sword also grew to 80 zhang long. It was like a giant blade that could split the heavens as it slashed at martial god Tianju. Luo Shui and Yun Yao also flew into the sky and attacked from both sides. The three of them joined forces to besiege martial god Tianju. Sword lights filled the sky and drowned martial god Tianju. However, martial god Tianju laughed disdainfully. His figure flashed and he entered the 1,000-feet-tall astral hurricane. Bam, 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 bam. Hundreds of icy blue, golden, and silver sword lights slashed the gold and silver astral hurricane, causing a loud explosion. However, all of the sword lights were shattered by the hurricane and merged into a 5-colored astral torrent. Martial god Tianju's left palm made a circle and slapped. He split the astral torrent into 3 light pillars and blasted them at Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao respectively. The three of them quickly retreated and defended with all their might. Ji Tianxing held the burial of heaven sword and slashed out with all his might. Yun Yao also waved her shadowless dual swords and stabbed out a cold starlight sword light. Luo Shui's left palm struck out an icy blue light pillar, while his right hand swung his sword continuously. Boom, 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 boom. The 3 5-colored light pillars were shattered into pieces. The 5-colored light shards that covered the sky rained down like a storm, covering 1,000 miles. The deafening sound reverberated between heaven and earth. Could be heard from thousands of miles away. The violent shockwave crazily struck the sky and earth. The pillar of heaven's mountains was on the verge of collapsing. Cracks appeared on the mountain and countless rocks collapsed. The 5-colored light barrier also vibrated violently. It was distorted by the shockwave and could break at any time. Huanglong Daoist, many elders, deacons, and disciples were enduring unprecedented pressure. They gritted their teeth and held on. Everyone sat on the training ground with their backs bent. Their faces were as white as paper and they were sweating profusely. Blood flowed out of their mouths and noses. Everyone's nerves were taut as they used all their strength. After all, this was a battle of life and death for the Pillar of Heaven's mountains. The enemy that the Pillar of Heaven's mountains was facing was the strongest of the 3 kingdoms, martial god Tianju. Sky-breaking sword. Moon-breaking sword. God-slaying sword. Ji Tianxing roared furiously. He kept waving his sword and using his killer moves to attack martial god Tianju. However, he kept the god-slaying flying dagger and did not use it. This was his biggest trump card. He would not use it unless it was a critical moment. Yun Yao also teleported in the sky. She used the shadowless sword to slash out invisible sword lights. She tried her best to assassinate martial god Tianju. Luo Shui used all her skills. She used palm techniques, fist techniques and sword techniques. She also used sword formations and movement techniques. She tried her best to hold martial god Tianju back. Her strength was not far from martial god Tianju's. In a head-on battle she would only be defeated after at least 10,000 moves. With Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao assisting from the side, the three of them gave martial god Tianju a lot of pressure. If martial god Tianju had not cultivated the revolving star passage divine technique and could use the power of others, he would have been defeated by the three of them. The two sides fought fiercely in the sky. Gradually the battlefield shifted to the north. After 15 minutes, the two sides had exchanged more than 1,000 moves. They were finally far away from the Pillar of Heaven's mountains. Only then did the Pillar of Heaven's mountains, which was on the verge of collapse, gradually calm down. The towering and majestic mountain was already riddled with scars, filled with ravines and cracks. The mountain protection formation that enveloped the peak of the mountain had dimmed. It was so thin that it was almost transparent. The thousands of disciples and deacons finally relaxed, revealing expressions of relief. Everyone fell to the ground. Their clothes were drenched in sweat. Their faces were pale as they panted heavily. In that short 15 minutes, they had used up almost all of their dermic powers. Even Huang Long and the other elders who were the most powerful among them were in a similar predicament. Not only were their hair disheveled, but they were also covered in sweat. There were also bloodstains on their faces. Soon an hour had passed. Ji Tianxing, Yun Yao and Luo Shui gradually gained the upper hand. They forced martial god Tianju to retreat. At this moment the two sides had exchanged more than 10,000 moves. They had used up more than half of their strength. Martial god Tianju was also covered in wounds. He was in a sorry state. His golden robe had become a pile of rags. His long hair was draped over his shoulders. There were more than a dozen wounds on his chest and back. Luo Shui was also heavily injured. Not only was he in a sorry state, but there were also bloodstains at the corner of his mouth. There were at least 9 wounds on his body. Ji Tianxing's injuries were similar to hers. His arms, legs and back were all bloody. Only Yun Yao's injuries were the lightest. Other than her internal organs being injured and bloodstains at the corner of her mouth, she was not injured at all. Chapter 2360. On the surface, it seemed that Ji Tianxing, Yun Yao and Luo Shui had the upper hand. However, in actual fact both sides were evenly matched and no one had the upper hand. Luo Shui was a rank 5 martial god and was only 1 rank lower than martial god Tianju. On the other hand, Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao were the most powerful among the martial sages. Both of them were gifted and had mastered powerful secret skills. They were also equipped with middle sacred weapons and their combat powers were comparable to rank 1 or 2 martial gods. It was as if martial god Tianju was being attacked by 3 martial gods. Fortunately, he had mastered the revolving star technique and was able to neutralize most of the attacks. Otherwise, he would have been defeated by the 3 of them. How could he have lasted until now? Damn bastards. They are only martial sages. How can their combat powers be so powerful? Martial god Tianju roared in his heart as he defended against the attacks of the 3. Back then, Kenshin was at the top of the mainland and no one was his match. At that time, martial god Tianju was jealous and dissatisfied. He was hostile toward Kenshin. However, he knew that he was no match for Kenshin and he had endured it. He did not show any goodwill toward Kenshin nor did he dare to provoke him. Now Kenshin had reincarnated. As a martial sage he had stirred up the entire mainland and fought with martial god Tianju for so long. No matter how dissatisfied martial god Tianju was, he had to admit that Kenshin was a rare genius. This man has already grown to such a stage. If he recovers to the martial god realm, won't he be invincible again? No. Even if I am severely injured I must kill him and eliminate all future troubles. Martial god Tianju thought to himself. He had made up his mind to kill Ji Tianxing no matter what. Heaven's domination. He suddenly let out a roar and golden light that blotted out the sky and covered the earth gushed out from his body, merging into the heaven and earth within 1,000 miles. At the same time he held the heaven-splitting sword tightly and slashed out 3 rays of golden sword radiance that were 1,000 feet long. Instantly, the entire area within a radius of a few thousand kilometers was illuminated by the blinding golden light. A peerlessly terrifying divine might of heaven and earth enveloped the entire area, ruthlessly suppressing Ji Tianxing. He was suppressed until he bent down. His face was pale and he broke out in cold sweat. It was difficult for him to move his feet, let alone escape. At that moment of life and death, a thought flashed across Ji Tianxing's mind. Tianju is a bastard. He actually didn't care about Luo Shui and Yao Yao's siege and risked his life to kill me. In just an instant he made up his mind and used his ultimate life-saving skill. Secret skill. As he let out a low shout, his body instantly disappeared, blending into the world within a radius of 1,500 miles. Within this area, the sky, the earth, the mountains and the ruins had all become one with him. Tianju was everywhere. Boom boom boom. Boom. Tianju, he heavens and heaven and earth, he was the heavens. Instantly an earth-shattering noise exploded, shaking the heavens and spreading for thousands of miles. 3 deep chase-like chasms were created on the vast earth, hundreds of miles long and tens of thousands of feet deep. Endless dust burst out, covering the sky and the sun. Countless gullies appeared around the abyss, and the ground within a radius of 3,000 miles began to tremble as if a super earthquake had occurred. This area was completely destroyed. All the mountains and forests were destroyed by the shockwave and turned into ruins. The scene of destruction was like the punishment of the gods and the punishment of the heavenly Tao. Even though Ji Tianxing had merged with 1,500 li of heaven and earth to block martial god Tianju's attack, Ji Tianxing still hadn't recovered from the shock. However, close to 1,000 miles of heaven and earth had been destroyed into ruins. Under such terrifying power he was also heavily injured. His internal organs ruptured and blood gushed out. Blood gushed out from his nose and mouth. His entire chest caved in and dozens of bones in his body were broken. It was as if an ordinary person had been trampled by an elephant. Fortunately, martial god Tianju's ultimate killer move only destroyed close to 1,000 li of land. If he could destroy 2,000 miles in one strike, Ji Tianxing's corporeal body would be destroyed, and his divine soul would be severely injured. At the same time, Luo Shui and Yun Yao's attacks also hit martial god Tianju. Seeing that martial god Tianju was determined to kill Ji Tianxing without caring about anything, the two of them were anxious. Luo Shui's heart was burning with worry. She used all her divine power and used her ultimate killer move. All water has its source, heaven and earth has its truth. Divine power, 1,000 transformations, sort of true self. She shouted expressionlessly. Her body and divine soul turned into an icy blue light and merged with the reverse water divine sword. The reverse water divine sword turned into 1,000 feet long ice crystal sword. It carried supreme divine power and slashed at martial god Tianju, who was as big as a mountain. Yun Yao was worried about Ji Tianxing's safety. She also used all her power without holding back. Holding the shadowless dual swords, she used her most powerful ultimate move. A cold light covers heaven and earth. 2 sleeves light shakes the starry sky. As she shouted angrily, her body ignited with silver starlight that shot into the sky like a bright moon. The shadowless dual sword stabbed out 2 silver starlight ribbons and pierced martial god Tianju's chest. Bam! 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 A deafening sound exploded in the sky and reverberated throughout the universe. The sword of true self formed by Luo Shui slashed martial god Tianju's left shoulder. Golden light flashed and blood splattered across the sky. Martial god Tianju's broad shoulder was cut off by the sword of true self. The wound was very smooth, revealing the pale golden divine bone. Dark red blood flowed out. His thick and sturdy left arm was sent flying far away, falling from the sky. Almost at the same time, Yun Yao's 2 starlight ribbons pierced martial god Tianju's chest. Poof! His broad and sturdy chest was pierced with 2 large bloody holes that went through the front and back of his body. Through the hideous wound, the internal organs and bones in the chest could be clearly seen. Unfortunately, the wounds were slightly off. Otherwise, martial god Tianju's heart would have been shattered. Dark red blood poured out of the wounds like a tide. The violent impact sent martial god Tianju flying and crashing into the ruins hundreds of miles away. The heart-wrenching pain made his body twitch and he let out an earth-shattering roar. Ah! You 2 bitches, I swear I will tear you into pieces and burn your bones to ashes. He struggled furiously. He used his chi to shake off the dirt and rocks on his body and climbed out of the ruins. heavily injured, he was like an enraged beast that had completely lost his mind. He held the sky-splitting sword with both hands and charged at Luo Shui recklessly, slashing down. Luo Shui and Yun Yao's expressions changed and they hurriedly used their techniques to block. At the same time, Ji Tianxing, who was also heavily injured, silently appeared behind martial god Tianju. His clothes were ragged and his hair was disheveled. His white robe had turned dark red and his injuries were extremely miserable. Chapter 2361. Whoosh. The golden light flashed high in the sky and disappeared in a flash. The 3-inch golden knife was the god-slaying flying knife. Ji Tianxing had not used it since the start of the battle. Now the god-slaying flying knife had shown its power. Martial god Tianju was charging toward Luo Shui in a frenzy. He was not prepared for Ji Tianxing's sudden appearance and sneak attack from behind with the flying knife. When he sensed that something was wrong and a chill of death rose from the bottom of his heart, it was too late. Bam! He was about to teleport away when he heard a muffled sound from behind him. Then a heart-wrenching pain spread from his chest to his brain. From the corner of his eye, he saw a ray of dark golden divine light shoot out from his chest and disappear in an instant. The violent impact caused his body to shake violently. He staggered a few steps forward before he stopped. He stood stiffly in the sky and slowly looked down at his chest. A third bloody hole appeared in his chest, which was already badly mutilated. This bloody hole was smaller than the previous two, but it was fatal. The bloody hole was where his heart was supposed to be. Now his heart had disappeared. Only a dozen pieces of broken flesh were left. His heart had actually been blasted apart by that golden light. Martial god Tianju immediately realized that after his heart was destroyed, his blood had stopped flowing. The life force of his physical body was also flowing away rapidly like a flood. He slowly turned around and looked at Ji Tianxing with a face full of shock. His eyes were filled with intense resentment. God. Fine. You actually... He roared in disbelief. His voice was hoarse and deep. As he spoke, blood spurted out from his nose and mouth. He could not accept this result at all. Ji Tianxing, who was only a martial saint, had destroyed his heart and destroyed his divine body that he had cultivated for thousands of years. Ji Tianxing stood in the sky tens of thousands of feet away from him. He looked at him expressionlessly and said indifferently, "You say your last words." The cold and emotionless words were like a great humiliation. They made martial god Tianju go crazy. "No. I am the strongest person in the continent. How can I be defeated? So what if my physical body is destroyed? You want to kill me? You must be dreaming." Martial god Tianju roared hysterically. His body was engulfed in golden flames that soared into the sky. He crazily waved his left palm, shooting out a gold and silver light that blotted out the sky, blasting towards Ji Tianxing. He brandished the heaven-splitting greatsword with his right hand and recklessly slashed out hundreds of sword lights towards Yun Yao and Luo Shui. Even if his heart was shattered, his body could still hold on for a short period of time. This was the strength of a martial god expert. Ji Tianxing, Yun Yao and Luo Shui hurriedly cast spells to block martial god Tianju's fierce attacks. Ping ping ping. The sword lights that were as dense as rain collided with each other with a loud bang, causing an earth-shaking explosion. The gold and silver light transformed into a 100-mile-wide whirlpool, trying to devour Ji Tianxing and shred him into pieces. Ji Tianxing had no choice but to retreat quickly. He repeatedly slashed out the starry sword light in an attempt to destroy the vortex. Taking advantage of the opportunity, martial god Tianju executed a secret technique to break open the sky before him. Swoosh! A 1,000-foot-long gap appeared in the sky, connecting to the alternate dimension. "I will return the pain I suffered today 100-fold sooner or later." Martial god Tianju's eyes were bloodshot. He glared viciously at Ji Tianxing and Luo Shui as he said those words. Then he stepped into the gap without hesitation and disappeared in a flash. After a breath's time, Luo Shui and Yun Yao destroyed the sword lights in the sky and rushed over as fast as lightning. However, the gap had already healed. Martial god Tianju had escaped into the alternate dimension and was already far away from this place. No one knew where he was. Luo Shui was about to cast a spell to break open the sky and chase after martial god Tianju. At this moment, Ji Tianxing finally dispelled the starry whirlpool. He hurriedly shouted, "Luo Shui, don't chase after them." Hearing his shout, Luo Shui hurriedly stopped casting and turned to look at him. Tianxing, why don't you chase after them? Yun Yao also looked at him with concern and checked his injuries. Tianxing's injuries were extremely miserable. His spiritual power and divine soul aura were also very weak. He had relied on his strong willpower to hold on until now and release the god-slaying flying dagger. Now, martial god Tianjue had escaped with serious injuries. He relaxed his mind and could no longer hold on. His body was on the verge of collapse and his consciousness became blurry. Tianxing. Yun Yao let out a worried cry. Her figure flashed and teleported to his side. She hurriedly hugged him. Luo Shui also flew over and released a wisp of divine sense to envelop him and check his injuries. A moment later, Luo Shui furrowed her brows and her eyes became very serious. His injuries are so serious. Not only was his physical body almost destroyed, but his divine soul was also almost destroyed. Hearing her say this, Yun Yao's heart burned with worry and she was extremely anxious. Divine Master, let's quickly return to the Pillar of Heaven's mountains and think of a way to save Tianxing, shall we? Luo Shui nodded solemnly and hurriedly flew back to the Pillar of Heaven's mountains with Yun Yao. 100 breaths later. Luo Shui and Yun Yao returned to the Pillar of Heaven's mountains together. Yun Yao carried the unconscious Tianxing in her arms. On the dojo at the peak of the mountain, thousands of disciples were meditating and recuperating from their injuries. Everyone looked very haggard and anxious. Their hearts were in their throats. When they saw Luo Shui and Yun Yao return, everyone heaved a sigh of relief and smiled with relief. Even though the two of them had suffered heavy injuries and looked very miserable, Lin Mingya could not help but laugh. Their safe return proved that they had defeated martial god Tianjue. The Pillar of Heaven's mountains had survived the calamity and was temporarily safe. However, when everyone saw the unconscious Tianxing, they became anxious again. Sush, sush, sush. Huanglong Daoist and a few elders hurriedly came forward and surrounded Luo Shui and Yun Yao. They looked at Tianxing with concern. Mistress, how are Master's injuries? Divine Master Luo Shui, what happened to our Grandmaster? Luo Shui glanced at them and said sternly, Tianxing is seriously injured and unconscious. However, his life is not in danger. You don't have to worry. I will treat his injuries. You should quickly comfort the disciples and be on full alert. Huanglong Daoist hurriedly cupped his fists and bowed. He said solemnly, I understand. Please don't worry, Divine Master. Then he turned and left with a few elders to comfort the disciples. Luo Shui and Yun Yao brought Tianxing and quickly entered the secret chamber of the Pillar of Heaven's Mountains Palace. The secret chamber was dimly lit and filled with rich five-colored spirit qi. Yun Yao carried Tianxing and placed him on the ice jade bed in the corner. Luo Shui walked to the bed and stood still. He instructed Yun Yao, you are also seriously injured. Quickly go and treat your injuries. Leave Tianxing to me. Yun Yao shook her head and said, no, I have the divine armor to protect me. My injuries are not serious. Let's help Tianxing treat his injuries together. Luo Shui saw that her attitude was firm and did not try to persuade her anymore. She formed hand seals with both hands and sent out a dense icy blue light into Tianxing's body to treat his injuries. Chapter 2362. Soon 2 days had passed. The Pillar of Heaven's mountains regained its tranquility, and the disciples cultivated as usual. Only Huanglong Daoist and a few elders had been waiting outside Tianxing's secret chamber, patiently waiting for news. In the secret chamber, Luo Shui had been casting spells continuously for 2 days and 2 nights. She was already mentally exhausted and looked tired. After all, she was also seriously injured and had not rested. Yun Yao's situation was slightly better, but she was also dispirited and looked tired. Finally, Luo Shui stopped and ended the spell. Yun Yao followed closely behind and also retracted her magic power. Phew! Luo Shui let out a long breath and revealed an expression of relief. All right, I've already controlled Tianxing's divine soul injury. It's no longer a big problem. He'll be able to wake up after resting for 1 more day. Hearing her say so, Yun Yao was relieved and nodded. Thank you, Divine Master. You're also seriously injured. Hurry up and heal your injuries. Luo Shui nodded and said, don't force yourself. Heal your injuries and recover your vitality as soon as possible. Don't affect the child in your belly. I'm going back to the Divine Kingdom. Only in the upstream divine altar can I heal my injuries as soon as possible. If there's any situation or news, send me a message. Yunyao quickly nodded and said, understood. Divine Master, go back and heal your injuries. Luo Shui did not say anything else. Her figure flashed and broke through space and teleported away. After she left, Yunyao got up and walked out of the secret chamber. Huang Long and a few elders who had been guarding the door quickly surrounded her and asked about the situation with concern. Mistress, how's Master's situation? Yunyao nodded to everyone and comforted them. Don't worry. Tianxing's injuries are no longer serious. He'll wake up soon. Now that the Pillar of Heaven's mountains is in a critical situation, you must not slack off. Keep an eye on the 72 cities at all times. If there's anything unusual, report it immediately. Huanglong Daoist and a few elders were finally relieved. They quickly bowed and said, yes, mistress. Yunyao gave a few more instructions and asked everyone to leave. After Huanglong and the other elders left, she returned to the secret chamber and began to heal her injuries and recover her magic power. A day later, Ji Tianxing woke up. However, his injuries were too severe. His face was still pale and his aura was very weak. Although Yunyao was healing herself, she was constantly paying attention to his condition. Seeing that he was awake, Yunyao quickly ended the treatment and came to him to ask about the situation. Tianxing, are you feeling better? Yes, the situation is much better. Ji Tianxing nodded. He slowly sat up and asked, Yao Yao, how are your injuries? Yunyao shook her head and comforted him. I have the mystic armor to protect me. I'm only slightly injured. It's nothing serious. Ji Tianxing was relieved. He turned his head and looked around the secret room. Seeing that there was only him and Yunyao in the secret room, he asked, where's Luo Shui? How is she? Yunyao explained patiently, the Divine Master is also severely injured. However, she endured her injuries and healed you for 2 days and 2 nights. She left yesterday evening and returned to the Luo Shui Divine Nation to heal. Ji Tianxing nodded to show that he understood. He then asked, how's the situation at Tianzhu Mountain? Is there any movement at the 72 cities? Yunyao comforted him gently, don't worry about these things. I've already instructed Huang Long to keep an eye on the 72 cities. If there's any news, they'll report it. The most important thing now is to heal your injuries and recover your strength as soon as possible. Ji Tianxing obviously knew this. He said with a worried expression, I took a full blow from martial god Tianzhu. It's lucky that my body wasn't destroyed. With such severe injuries, I'll need at least 2 to 3 years to fully recover. However, the situation is critical now. How can we have so much time? Yunyao thought for a moment and said with a serious expression, if that's the case, then we can only go to the Divine Pagoda to heal. Ji Tianxing nodded and said, yes, that's the only way. The flow of time on the 6th floor of the Divine Pagoda is 50 times faster than the outside world. I only need half a month. I hope that after Yu takes over the 72 cities, he'll rest for a period of time. Yunyao's expression became more and more serious. Her heart was filled with worry. I'm just worried that Yu won't give us that much time. Ji Tianxing thought for a moment and said, the only thing we can do now is to send a message to Luo Shui. We'll discuss with her and see if she has any ideas. Yunyao quickly took out a communication jade slip and sent a message to Luo Shui. The two waited patiently for half an hour before they received Luo Shui's reply. Yunyao cast a spell and opened the communication jade slip. A light screen lit up in front of her and an image appeared. In the image there was a huge ice blue altar. At the top of the altar there was a huge water ball. It was half black and half blue and looked extremely mysterious. Luo Shui was wearing an ice blue dress. She had an elegant and noble temperament. She sat cross-legged in the water ball and was circulating her energy to heal her injuries. She closed her eyes and said calmly, I've already heard about you leading a large number of warships and foreign race experts to invade the 72 cities. Therefore, I've sent out a large number of elite scouts to keep an eye on the 72 cities' movements and keep an eye on them. Yu's wild ambition is obvious. His next target will definitely be the Pillar of Heaven's mountains. However, you don't have to worry. Go to the Divine Pagoda and enter seclusion to heal your injuries. Once I've recovered, I'll head to the 72 cities first to assassinate the foreign race experts. I'll obstruct their plan of attack and buy time for you. As soon as she finished speaking, The image on the light screen gradually disappeared. Yun Yao relaxed her brows and said with a smile, "Tianxing, Godlord Luo Shui really has a plan. She's circulating her energy to heal her injuries in the upstanding water divine altar. She should be able to recover soon. If she personally heads to the 72 cities to assassinate the foreign race experts, she'll definitely be able to achieve miraculous results." Ji Tianxing nodded and said with a gratified expression, "The ancestor demon god wants to kill me. Martial god Tianju also wants to kill me. Even in you and the foreign race experts want to take my life. Now that we're in an extremely dangerous situation, only she will help us wholeheartedly." Yun Yao nodded in agreement and said, "That's right. We and the Luo Shui divine nation will live and die together. We must work together to resolve this crisis." Ji Tianxing's eyes were burning. He said with confidence and determination, "Even if there are thousands of dangers, they won't be able to defeat me. Once I return to the God realm, I'll definitely kill all the demon race, martial god Tianju, and the foreign race. Believe me, that day will come very soon." Yun Yao looked at him expectantly and nodded heavily. Then Ji Tianxing took out the small golden pagoda and cast a spell to open a light door. He and Yun Yao stepped into the teleportation light door and left the secret room in a flash. Swoosh. In the next moment, the two crossed thousands of miles and entered the Jutian Tenju Tower. They appeared on the altar on the 5th level of the Divine Pagoda. Chapter 2363. The dimly lit 6th floor was completely silent. There were only a few rays of distorted 5-colored light in the depths of the darkness. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao moved forward in the darkness and could feel the difference in the flow of time. Although the situation at Pillar of Heaven's mountains was critical and there was not much time left for them. Before they went into seclusion to recuperate, the two of them still went to visit Jiku. Jiku was cultivating in seclusion in the distorted spacetime. She lay in the darkness calmly and was in a state of deep concentration. She was unaware of everything around her. A layer of pale golden flames enveloped her body and made her look even more noble and mysterious. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao were surprised that Jiku's strength had improved tremendously and she had reached the 2nd level of the martial sage realm. Moreover, she had obtained the inheritance of the mysterious demon god and had been cultivating in the darkness. Her strength would definitely increase tremendously. Ji Tianxing observed for a while and suddenly realized something. The pale golden flames around Jiku's body was like a protective shield. The flames surged slowly like flowing water, faintly condensing into a strange scene. The most obvious pattern was that of a firebird. Its body was long and elegant and its wings and tail were long and narrow. It was a pity that the flames flowed continuously and the pattern of the firebird was faintly discernible. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao observed for a while but could not see clearly what kind of demonic beast it was. The two of them did not want to disturb Jiku's cultivation. They suppressed their doubts and turned to leave. Then the two of them sat down in the darkness and took out a large number of elixirs and spirit stones. They started to recuperate and recover their powers. Time passed very quickly. Unknowingly, a year had passed in the darkness. After a year of recuperation, Yun Yao's injuries had healed and she had returned to her peak state. She continued to cultivate in seclusion and tried her best to increase her strength and break through to the 8th level of the martial sage realm. Ji Tianxing's injuries were too serious. Even though he had spent a year and consumed a large number of spirit stones and elixirs, his injuries had not healed completely. In order to completely heal his injuries, he had to recuperate for another year before he could return to his peak state. A year had passed in the dark space, but only 7.5 days had passed in the outside world. It was noon that day. Among the 72 cities, Heaven-reaching City was located in the middle. This ancient city with 3,000 years of history occupied an area of 200 miles in radius. The city walls were 300 meters tall and were extremely majestic. The city was surrounded by vast plains, and it was only several thousand miles away that there were endless towering mountain ranges. All this time, Heaven-reaching City had been very prosperous, with more than 4 million people under its rule. Moreover, the resources around Heaven-reaching City were abundant. Not only were there endless medicinal gardens, but there were also more than a dozen large spirit stone veins. However, after Anu led his fleet to invade the 72 cities, he took over Heaven-reaching City. He and the other captains used a secret technique to control the Sky-reaching City Lord, Vice City Lord, Garrison General and other experts. The The soldiers and commoners in the city could only choose to submit under the pressure of the experts of the Heaven Punisher race. After half a month of reorganization, the entire heaven-reaching city fell under Yu's control. He used this place as his capital to control all 72 cities. At that moment, 20 battleships that were 1,000 meters long were gathered in the sky above heaven-reaching city. 2,000 warriors of the Heaven Punisher race were waiting in the battleships. A strong murderous aura shrouded the entire heaven-reaching city, causing the heavens and earth to darken. The commoners in the city were anxious and trembling. They hid in their homes and did not dare to show their faces. Everyone was guessing that the foreign tribe army was about to set off again. However, they did not know which force was going to suffer this time. Inside the city lord's mansion, more than 20 experts of the Heaven Punisher race had gathered in the meeting hall. And Yu, who was dressed in golden armor, sat at the head of the table looking high and mighty. 20 captains in silver armor stood on both sides of the hall. They were all experts of the martial god realm. And Yu looked at the crowd sternly and said in a deep voice, "Everyone, according to General Fu Long's orders and instructions, we have to advance slowly and steadily. Only in this way can we successfully realize our plan to rule this world. It has been half a month since we took over the 72 cities. After half a month of planning and reorganization, we have completely taken control of the 72 cities. Some follow-up work is still in progress. Soon this place will become our base camp, the most solid fortress. However, today the time is ripe. We will set off again and point our swords at the Pillar of Heaven's mountains." And Yu's stern voice reverberated in the hall. After he finished speaking, the captain in silver armor said, "Deputy General N, we have been bored during this period of time. With our strength we can crush the entire world. Why do we have to be so cautious?" The other captains nodded in agreement and chimed in impatiently. "We should have led the troops to set off a long time ago to flatten the Pillar of Heaven's mountains and attack the Luoshui Holy Kingdom. As the saying goes, speed is the most important thing in war. If we delay like this, the people of the Pillar of Heaven's mountains will be scared out of their wits and run away in advance. We have to be so cautious when dealing with a small Pillar of Heaven's mountains. Won't we have to spend a few hundred years attacking the 3 holy kingdoms in the future?" In the end, many captains were unhappy with Yu's high position. However, the captains did not dare to complain to the dragon-subduing general. Instead, they frowned at Yu and expressed their opposition. Yu knew everyone's reaction and mentality. He was not angry. Instead, he said sternly, "I can completely understand everyone's feelings. Therefore, we will set off today and attack the Pillar of Heaven's mountains. Since all the captains are so impatient, I also wish you all success in your endeavors. After we take down the Pillar of Heaven's mountains, the dragon-subduing general will reward us according to our merits. Let's go." And Yu waved his hand and gave the order to set off. He stepped across the hall and walked towards the door. The 20 captains followed closely behind. However, as soon as Yu reached the entrance, he saw 2 black-armored guards rushing towards him with hurried expressions. "General, and something bad has happened. General, there is an urgent report from the front line. There is enemy news." 2 guards clad in black armor rushed to the entrance as fast as lightning, bowed to Yu and reported the situation with an anxious tone. Yu stopped in his tracks and frowned. With a sullen face he asked, "What happened? Why are you so flustered?" The 20 captains behind Yu were also puzzled. Their gazes gathered on the 2 guards. The 2 guards did not dare to talk nonsense and quickly reported the truth. "General, and just this morning Qinyuan City in the south was suddenly invaded by an expert. More than a dozen elite soldiers guarding Qinyuan City were all killed by a mysterious powerhouse. After the mysterious expert left Qinyuan City, he sneaked into the nearby Chang'e City and assassinated 9 elite soldiers. Captain Qi Ling, who was guarding Chang'e City, personally went to stop the mysterious expert but was killed on the spot." Chapter 2364. What? Captain Qi Ling was killed? Yu's expression suddenly changed. His eyes narrowed as a trace of shock flashed across his eyes. When the 20 captains heard this news, they all revealed expressions of disbelief and exclaimed in surprise. "How is this possible? Wasn't Qi Ling a second-level martial god? Was that mysterious powerhouse also a martial god? Where did this mysterious powerhouse come from? How many people were there? What did that mysterious powerhouse look like? Which organization did he belong to? Everyone found this unbelievable and began to question the guards who had sent the message. The two guards who had sent the message were startled and shook their heads at the same time. According to the report from Changle City's guards, the mysterious powerhouse and Captain Qiling were fighting outside the city. The shock waves from their battle were too terrifying, and no one was able to get within 500 kilometers. Aside from Captain Qiling, no one knows how many powerhouses there were, whether they were male or female or which organization they came from. This answer stunned Yu and the other captains, and their expressions became rather strange. Everyone frowned and began to whisper to each other. Even now we don't know who the opponent is? Isn't this too ridiculous? The guards of Qingyuan City were killed and Captain Qiling was killed as well. But we don't even know if the enemy is male or female. Aren't there very few powerhouses in Shenwu continent and there are only 3 martial gods? If the mysterious powerhouse was acting alone, then he must be one of the 3 martial gods. What do we do now? If the mysterious powerhouse could kill Qiling, then he must be able to kill the other captains as well. 1 or 2 captains might not be a match for that person. We need to work together to kill him. The 20 captains expressed their own opinions, and they were all trying to guess the identity of the mysterious powerhouse and discussing countermeasures. Yu's expression became increasingly ugly, and he frowned in thought for a moment before speaking in a dignified tone. It seems that some people don't want us to take Tianzhu Peak so easily. However, this is a disgrace to our race and it is also a huge threat. For now, we can only temporarily give up on attacking Tianzhu Peak and take care of the mysterious powerhouse first. Otherwise, if this person were to wander between the various cities, he would very likely cause even greater casualties to us. Hearing this, the 9 captains nodded in agreement. However, 7 of them shook their heads in disagreement. There were still 4 people who maintained a neutral attitude and remained silent. What mysterious expert? He's just a martial god. Why are you so scared? How can we stop our attack plan because of a mysterious expert? Even if that mysterious expert is very strong, we don't have to mobilize so many people, do we? In my opinion, we should send a few captains to surround that person and kill him. The remaining captains should continue to attack Pillar of Heaven's mountains. The few captains who were against the idea all suggested to Yu. Yu was unhappy. He looked at them coldly and said in a deep voice, "Well, since you're so confident, I'll give you a chance to prove yourself. The 7 of you should join hands and take the battleship and the men to encircle that mysterious expert. As long as you guys can successfully complete the mission, I will definitely request for you guys to be rewarded heavily by General Dragon subduing." Hearing his words, the 7 captains all frowned and had different opinions. Deputy General Yu, what is the meaning of this? Are you testing us on purpose? Hee. Deputy General N, are you trying to provoke us? Seems like Deputy General N is looking down on us. If that's the case, we'll accept this mission and kill that bullshit expert so that Deputy General N can take a good look at us. Deputy General N, please remember what you said just now. Set up the celebration banquet and wait for our triumphant return. Let's put it bluntly. You can send us to encircle that mysterious expert, but you can't bring your men to attack Pillar of Heaven's mountains and take all the credit for yourself. You have to wait for us to come back. The 7 captains were unhappy with Yu, so they accepted the mission unyieldingly. In order to prevent Yu from cheating them, they asked Yu and the rest of the captains to wait in heaven-reaching city. Yu was enraged by the attitude of the captains. He sneered and said, "All right, I'll set up the celebration banquet and wait for you guys to come back at the governor's mansion. Of course, you have to end this quickly and don't affect our attack plan. I'll give you guys 5 days at most." The 7 captains held their heads high and sneered confidently. "Don't worry, Deputy General An's celebration banquet is mine. 5 days? That's more than enough. If we complete the mission ahead of time, will Deputy General An give us an extra reward?" And Yu pretended that he did not hear the last sentence and said, "Time is of the essence. You guys should depart now." The 7 captains did not say anything else. They saluted Yu and the rest of the captains, turned around and stepped into the sky. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. In the blink of an eye, they flew into their respective battleships. Then the 7 battleships sailed out from the fleet and flew towards the south. Soon they disappeared into the horizon. Yu and the rest of the captains turned around and returned to the meeting hall. The atmosphere was a little tense. The captains were talking to each other through voice transmission. One of the captains with a beard wanted to curry favor with Yu. He asked, "Generalin, those 7 guys are obviously unhappy with you. Why do you still want to help them?" "Help them? Why do you say that?" And Yu raised an eyebrow and asked in confusion. The bearded captain frowned and said, "You sent them to kill the mysterious elite. After they complete the mission you still want to reward them. Isn't that helping them?" And Yu's lips curled into a sneer as he said in a playful tone, "I know more about the 5 elements world than you do. Do you think this mission is that easy to complete? They don't know how high the sky is and they still want to enjoy the celebration banquet? I don't want them to come back like stray dogs." The bearded captain was even more confused. He asked, "If the Einherjar in this world is really that powerful, why did you send them to kill the mysterious elite? If they fail and are killed by the mysterious elite, won't we lose our men and our plan to conquer this world?" And Yu smirked. "So what? Even if those captains are killed, they are sacrificed in the line of duty. They can only blame themselves for not being as strong as the enemy. I've done a great job and I'm promoted to deputy general. Many of the captains are jealous and dissatisfied. They have been living a smooth life. They are very confident and arrogant. If they don't suffer some setbacks and learn their lesson, how will they listen to my orders obediently?" The bearded captain suddenly came to a realization. His face was full of admiration. He smiled and said, "I see." Chapter 2365. Late at night. There were no stars in the night sky and it was as dark as ink. In the southern region of the 72 cities, there was a city called Luhi City. The entire city was silent, deep in slumber under the curtain of night. There were more than 1 million citizens in the city. Most of them were from the human tribe and a small number of them were from the demon tribe. However, the city was now under the control of the Heaven Punisher tribe. Not only was there a martial god realm captain in the city governor's mansion, but there were also 18 warriors from the Heaven Punisher tribe in the city. Even though it was late at night, there were still more than 10 patrols in the city. The city guards on the surrounding city walls were also on high alert as they rested their spears on their heads. However, the defense was completely useless against a martial god realm expert. In a secret room filled with spiritual chi and cultivation resources deep in the city governor's mansion, 2 warriors from the Heaven Punisher tribe in black armor were checking the mountain of resources and putting them into their interspatial rings. These were the treasures and resources that they had obtained after taking over Luhi City. Suddenly, a beam of icy blue light silently shone in the corner of the secret room. Swoosh! 2 beams of bone-chilling sword radiance instantly pierced through the darkness and aimed at the chests of the 2 warriors in black armor. The 2 of them were caught off guard and before they realized anything was wrong, the sword radiance pierced through the scales on their chests. Bam! Bam! With a muffled sound, the armor worn by the 2 men was pierced, and the scales on their chests were shattered. Before the 2 of them could even scream, they fell to the ground and died. Then an icy blue figure walked out from the darkness in the corner of the secret room. This slim and graceful figure was wearing an ice blue dress. Her face was beautiful and her temperament was noble and cold. She glanced at the corpses on the ground and threw out a ball of icy blue flame, burning the 2 corpses to ashes. Without a doubt she was martial god Luoxue. She had fought with the Heaven Punisher tribe before and knew their weakness. Thus, when she assassinated the martial sages in black armor, she killed them with 1 strike. After taking care of the 2 corpses, she waved her sleeve and put the mountain of cultivation resources into her interspatial ring. Although she was the ruler of the Holy Kingdom and was rich, she did not care about these resources. However, she was unwilling to let those resources fall into the hands of the Heaven Punisher race and strengthen them. In just 2 breaths' time she had emptied all the resources and treasures. Her figure immediately became transparent and disappeared from the secret room. Not long after, she appeared in another room 1,000 feet away. In this room there was a black-armored guard who was cultivating. Luoxue hid in the dark, shooting out an icy blue sword chi with a flick of his finger, instantly killing the black-armored guard. Next she teleported to another room and assassinated 2 black-armored warriors without making a sound. As time passed, she appeared and disappeared like a ghost in the city lord's manor, coming and going without a trace. In the short span of an hour she had consecutively killed 12 black-armored warriors. With her divine consciousness, she discovered that there was only 1 martial god realm captain left in the city lord's mansion. There were also 6 black-armored warriors scattered around the city walls. Luo Shui decided to kill the captain first before dealing with the remaining black-armored warriors. The study of the city lord's manor was brightly lit. A middle-aged man who was as muscular as a rhinoceros and wore silver armor sat before a tall table, frowning as he pondered something. He was the captain of the battleship Nebula, a third-level martial god realm expert. Ever since the Heaven Punisher race had taken over the 72 cities, Nebula had been busy. In order to completely control Luhi City and plunder as many resources and treasures as possible, he was worried sick. Not long ago he had received a message from An Yu. It was said that a mysterious expert had infiltrated the 72 cities and was assassinating the captain and the Heaven Punisher warriors. Up until now, more than 30 warriors had been killed and Captain Qiling had also been assassinated. An Yu reminded him to be more alert and to report immediately if there were any abnormal situations. When Nebula heard the news, he was worried and was considering how to deal with it. At this moment, an extremely cold and dangerous aura instantly appeared from the corner of the study. Nebula, who was in deep thought, was startled awake when he sensed the cold aura. He almost instinctively turned around and punched behind him. At the same time, a dazzling icy light pierced his chest and was about to pierce his armor. Boom! In a deafening explosion, Nebula's fists hit the icy light. A shockwave that could destroy heaven and earth instantly exploded in the study. Boom! Visible icy blue ripples swept through the entire city lord's manor and spread in all directions. It was about to affect half of Luhi City. The city lord's manor was destroyed on the spot. Palaces, houses and courtyards were reduced to rubble by the shockwave. Hundreds of people in the manor were instantly killed and turned into dust. They were buried in the ruins. Nebula was also sent flying by the shockwave. He rolled and smashed into the street 10 miles away. The straight and wide limestone street had long been twisted and broken. After Nebula landed, he created a deep hole in the ground and dust flew up into the air. He felt intense pain in his internal organs and blood kept flowing out of the corner of his mouth. Intense shock filled his mind. He crawled out of the ruins with a horrified expression and flew into the night sky. Damn it! Who sneaked an attack on me? How could they be so powerful? Could it be the mysterious powerhouse that General An mentioned? Nebula did not hesitate to draw his bronze saber and put on a defensive posture. He looked around with a malicious gaze. At this moment, the night sky above his head lit up again with an icy blue light. Swoosh! A giant icy blue sword that was thousands of feet long slashed down from the sky. Before the sword light arrived, the bone-chilling cold had already locked onto Nebula's soul. His body was cold and stiff and he could not move an inch. At the moment of life and death, he could only wave his saber and desperately slash out 3 blood-red saber lights to block the icy blue sword. Bang! 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 The blood-red saber lights collided with the icy blue sword, causing an earth-shattering explosion. The icy blue sword shattered into millions of ice crystal fragments and scattered in the night sky. The blood-red saber lights also collapsed. Nebula was once again sent flying and smashed into the ruins below. Another huge hole was created in the ground and more than 10 ravines split open. The entire Luhi city shook violently as if a super earthquake had occurred. The people in the city were awakened and ran away in panic, letting out cries of fear and despair. The previously silent city suddenly became noisy and chaotic. Nebula did not have time to care about the situation in the city. He cursed with a ferocious expression and turned to fly towards the north. He didn't even get to see who his opponent was before he was severely injured. He knew very well that if he continued to stay in Luhi City, he might lose his life. In order to save his life, he was willing to give up Luhi City. Swoosh! Nebula, who was shocked and flustered, teleported 300 miles away and fled to the sky above the wasteland outside the city. However, the other party seemed to have expected him to escape. Chapter 2366. Ping ping ping. Xingyun couldn't dodge in time and was struck by the 3 sword rays. A loud explosion shook the sky, causing the night sky to tremble violently. An icy blue shockwave visible to the naked eye spread out like a ripple, sweeping across an area of 800 kilometers. Xingyun was sent flying and the silver armor he was wearing completely shattered, scattering into the night sky. His right arm and hind leg had been cut off and blood was gushing out. After flying dozens of miles in the night sky, he crashed heavily into the wilderness outside the city. A deep crater was smashed into the ground and mud flew up into the air. At this moment, a figure appeared in the sky where he had been standing. The slim figure in ice blue looked down at him from above, her beautiful face filled with cold, murderous intent. Nebula looked up at the night sky, and only then did he see the enemy's appearance clearly. It was actually a peerlessly beautiful woman in a blue dress. Xingyun was stunned for a moment, then he was immediately awakened by the sharp pain all over his body. He quickly turned around and fled towards the north. His fighting spirit was crushed and he didn't want to stay even a moment longer. He only wanted to leave this place as soon as possible and get away from that terrifying goddess of death. However, he was already heavily injured and his strength was extremely weak. Shua. He cast a spell to break open the night sky and was about to teleport away. However, the woman in the blue dress chased after him. She appeared behind him out of thin air about 10 miles away. She raised her left fist expressionlessly, and a ball of dazzling white light shot through the air. Boom! With a loud explosion, the spatial crack that Xingyun had created was shattered on the spot. The berserk impact force blasted Xingyun back 10,000 feet away, vomiting blood repeatedly from his mouth. At the same time, the woman in blue brandished her divine sword and slashed out more than 300 times in an instant. Swish! Swish! The overwhelming icy blue sword light formed a mysterious and profound sword formation that enveloped the nebula. Xingyun was horrified. His eyes were filled with grief, anger, and despair. In the next instant, the sword formation erupted with destructive power. Hundreds of sharp sword lights crisscrossed and pierced through the nebula. The only thing that could be heard was the continuous explosion of the muffled sounds that reverberated in the night sky. Xingyun was cut and chopped by the sword light ceaselessly. Blood gushed out from his body and countless pieces of flesh and bones flew out. After a full 10 breaths of time, his physical body was minced into pieces by the sword formation and was completely destroyed. The Heaven Punishers were different from the humans of the Five Elements world. Once their physical bodies were destroyed, they would be completely dead. There would be no continuation of their souls. A moment later, the icy blue sword formation that covered a radius of 10,000 feet gradually dissipated. Pieces of flesh and blood rained down from the sky, mixed with a spatial ring. The woman in the blue dress walked over and waved her sleeve. She grabbed the ring and put it away. Then she turned around and flew back to Luhi City. From the beginning to the end, only Xingyun saw her real face, but it was useless. The citizens of Luhi City still did not know what had happened and were still in chaos. Clamorous shouts and screams reverberated throughout the city. Countless civilians and martial practitioners fled in panic. Under the control of the 6 black-armored guards, the city guards guarding the city suppressed the fleeing citizens and stabilized the situation in the city. However, after the woman in a blue dress returned to Luhi City, she merely used an eighth of an hour to kill the 6 guards that were scattered throughout the city. The experts of the Heaven Punisher clan who had stayed behind to guard Luhi City had all died. The city lords, deputy city lords, guards, and nobles who were controlled by the Heaven Punishers became puppets with their strings cut. They no longer gave orders. They stayed in their own residences and waited quietly. No matter how chaotic the situation in the city was, they were indifferent. After all, they were controlled by the Heaven Punishers' secret technique. Without the orders of the Heaven Punishers, they would not do anything. 2 hours later, the chaotic and noisy Luhi City gradually quieted down. The citizens who were filled with fear and worry gradually calmed down when they saw that there was nothing unusual inside or outside the city. There were no signs of fighting either. A night passed. When a new day arrived and the sun rose, everything returned to normal. However, at this moment, 7 black warships that were 10,000 feet long sped over from afar. The 7 warships stopped above Luhi City and hovered high in the sky, blocking the warm sunlight. The hearts of the citizens in the city, which had just settled down, immediately rose to their throats. Everyone hid in their residences and did not dare to show their faces. They were afraid that they would anger the foreign race experts and be killed. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The doors of the 7 warships opened. 7 captains in silver armor flew out along with dozens of soldiers in black armor. These 7 captains had been ordered to surround and kill the mysterious expert. Just last night, They had received news that Luhe City had been ambushed by a mysterious expert and had rushed over to check the situation. Unfortunately, they were a step too late. The dozens of soldiers in black armor rushed to the city lord's mansion and the surrounding city walls to check the situation. The 7 captains gathered in the sky above the city. They observed the situation in the city as they discussed. The captain in the lead was the oldest. He was an old man with a head full of white hair. He frowned as he looked at the devastated Luhe City. His weathered face was as cold as ice. "It looks like we're too late." The other captains were full of indignation as they cursed bitterly. "Despicable bastard, how could he escape so quickly? Don't let us catch him. Otherwise we'll cut him into pieces and chop him into mincemeat." The city lord's mansion has been destroyed. The entire city is filled with cracks and ruins. It looks like it was done by a martial god. I wonder if anyone witnessed the battle and saw the appearance of the mysterious expert? Everyone calm down. Let's wait for the scouts to check the situation first. 15 minutes later, the dozens of soldiers in black armor returned to the sky and reported the news to the 7 captains. "My lords, the city lord's mansion has been destroyed. No one is left alive. The battle ended 6 hours ago. The soldiers guarding Luhe City were all killed. However, no one saw the mysterious expert. My lords, I found traces of a battle in the wilderness outside the city. There's also the remains of Captain Xingyun's body." The 7 captains' faces changed when they heard the news of Xingyun's death. Shock filled their eyes. What? Captain Xingyun was really killed? How could this be? Could it be that Xingyun didn't even have a chance to escape? Xingyun had reached the level 3 martial god realm, but he was still killed by the mysterious expert. How powerful is that person? After the mysterious expert succeeded in the assassination, he quickly left and waited for the opportunity to find his next target. This is troublesome. How can we guess the whereabouts of the mysterious expert? How can we find him? The captains discussed among themselves. Their faces were filled with worry. Previously, when they were in front of Yu, they were full of confidence and acted as if they could capture him easily. Chapter 2367. 2 hours later. The 7 captains checked the inside and outside of Luhe City. They even rushed to the wasteland outside the city to collect the remains of Xingyun's body. After that, a 3rd-level martial god realm captain cast a spell on the ruins of the city governor's mansion. He cast the ultimate skill of the Heaven Punisher clan, the Tracing Divine skill. This secret skill could use the remaining aura of the heavens and earth to restore what had happened not long ago according to the current scene. Even though this divine art was very profound and the captain had yet to fully grasp it, he was still able to do so. With his strength he could only restore what had happened in one day. But this was enough. He stood in the ruins with a solemn expression and waved his hands to cast a mysterious spell, releasing thousands of wisps of blood-red light. Endless blood-red light scattered between heaven and earth, covering the ruins of the city governor's mansion. The other 6 captains were all standing outside the ruins, looking on with anticipation. After about 15 minutes, the captain finished casting the spell. Swoosh! In the sky above the ruins, thousands of wisps of blood-red light condensed into a 30-meter-long light screen. A blurry image appeared in the dark red light screen. It was the city governor's mansion before the incident. As the image changed, an icy blue sword light suddenly flashed. A pair of iron fists that were as black as dragon claws fiercely hit the sword light. Instantly, a destructive shockwave exploded in the city governor's mansion. The huge city governor's mansion was immediately destroyed into ruins, and countless ravines appeared on the ground. Then a burly figure soared into the sky and flew out of the city. A wisp of icy blue light streaked across the sky and chased after the burly figure, disappearing from the image. After a few breaths, the dark red light screen dissipated. The captains looked at each other in shock and confusion. Although the image was blurry, they could vaguely see that the burly figure was the captain of Xingyun. As for the icy blue light, it should be the mysterious expert who had assassinated Xingyun. From the image, the mysterious expert suddenly assassinated Xingyun and destroyed the city governor's mansion with one move. That's right. The mysterious expert only used one move to severely injure the captain of Xingyun and forced him to flee. However, Captain Xingyun was killed outside the city after escaping for only a few hundred miles. Even with Xingyun's strength, he could only escape a few hundred miles away. You can imagine how terrifying that mysterious expert's strength is. I dare to confirm that the mysterious expert's ability is absolutely at 5th stage realm and above, or possibly even at 7th stage realm. It's a pity that I still can't see the appearance of the mysterious expert clearly. I can only see a ray of blue light. Everyone thought that they would be able to find some clues using the tracing divine spell. But in the end there was still no progress. The leading white-haired elder said with a grave expression, "Everyone, the mysterious expert is very strong. Furthermore, he appears and disappears unpredictably. He is very difficult to deal with. We must brace ourselves and do our best to deal with this. Only by successfully completing the mission would he be able to hold his head high. Otherwise, and you will laugh at us." Everyone nodded to show that they understood. Their expressions and eyes were also very serious. "Don't worry, Captain Bai Yun. Since we dared to accept this mission, we are confident that we can complete it. Even if we have to pay a high price, we have to complete it successfully. We can't let you look down on us. It's only now that I understand that that fellow is really sinister. No wonder he intentionally provoked us. Captain Bai Yun, make a decision. How should we deal with this?" Captain Bai Yun was the leading white-haired elder. He muttered to himself for a moment and spoke out in a low voice. "Everyone has seen it. There should only be one mysterious expert. This person is always alone and mysterious. He is extremely difficult to deal with. But this person's actions are traceable. Earlier he had sneak attacked Qingyuan City and Chang'an City. Last night he sneaked an attack on Luhe City. These 3 cities are not far apart from each other and the order is from south to north. So the mysterious expert's next target should be one of the nearby cities." Captain Bai Yun's analysis was clear and logical. The other few captains nodded their heads continuously, expressing their agreement and conviction. Captain Bai Yun continued, "This seat has seen the map. There are 2 cities nearest to Luhe City. They are Giant Spirit City in the north and Chao Mountain City in the northwest. Tonight these 2 cities might be attacked. So we can only split into 2 and rush to these 2 cities as quickly as possible to wait." Hearing what he said, the eyes of the captains lit up with anticipation. Yes, Captain Bai Yun's method is feasible. Not just that, we need to send a message to the guards of these 2 cities and have them cooperate with us. Once we discover the mysterious expert has invaded, we need to find a way to delay the mysterious expert. Also, we need to use the blood shadow crystal to record the appearance of the mysterious expert. The mysterious expert is very strong. If we split into 2, I fear it will be difficult to kill him. Once we discover this person's whereabouts, we need to keep in contact and complete the encirclement as quickly as possible. The captains brainstormed and put forward different suggestions. Soon the plan was perfected. Seeing everyone agree, Captain Bai Yun did not waste words and said decisively, "Shuangyu, Lingyuan and Chongling, you 3 will follow this seat. We will immediately rush to Giant Spirit City in the north. The mysterious expert may attack there. The remaining 3 captains, you will rush to Chao Mountain City. If there is a situation, immediately send a message." None of the captains objected and the matter was settled. Then everyone returned to their respective warships and left quickly. White Cloud, Shuangyu, Lingyuan and Chongling's 4 warships quickly rushed to Giant Spirit City in the north. The other 3 warships rushed to Chao Mountain City as fast as lightning. Giant Spirit City was very close to Luhe City, only 60,000 miles away. The warships were very fast and reached the vicinity of Giant Spirit City in just 4 hours. In order to keep it a secret, the 4 warships stopped a few hundred miles away from the city. The 4 captains walked out of the warships and cast spells to shrink the warships 10,000 times. They turned into pitch-black swords and carried them on their backs. Then they used an invisibility spell and sneaked into Giant Spirit City. There were only 20 martial sage realm warriors in black armor guarding Giant Spiritual City. There were no martial god realm captains guarding the city. After the 4 entered Giant Spirit City, they did not disturb the black-armored warriors guarding the city. They spread out and hid near the surrounding city walls, waiting patiently. A short while later, the other 3 captains sent a message saying they had arrived at Chao Mountain City. Also, the 3 captains put away their warships and quietly entered the city master's mansion to hide. There was a martial god realm captain in Chao Mountain City who was temporarily the city master. He had 15 black-armored warriors under his command. The 3 captains met up with him and hid in the city master's mansion, waiting for the mysterious expert to walk into the trap. When the 2 groups finished their ambush, it was already evening. Chapter 2368. 4 hours later it was deep into the night. Giant Holy City was silent. Only a few palaces and courtyards were still lit. Ever since the Heaven Punisher took over this city, a curfew had been enforced. After dark, no people or martial artists walked outside. They all stayed at home and were not allowed to go out. Therefore, only the patrolling guards were walking around Giant Holy City. The atmosphere was dull and silent. Bai Yun, Shuangyu, Chongling and Lingyuan were hiding under the city walls in 4 directions. They hid their presence and waited patiently. Waiting was the most torturous. Time seemed to slow down. Bai Yun, Shuangyu and the others were excited and expectant, but also worried and nervous. They hoped that the mysterious expert would appear as soon as possible, but they were also worried that the mysterious expert was too strong. It was hard to predict whether tonight would be a blessing or a disaster. Finally it was midnight. The night was even darker and the cold wind was still howling. Suddenly, a dazzling icy blue brilliance lit up in the city lord's mansion. Then a deafening explosion spread in the night sky. Bang! With that muffled explosion, an icy blue shock wave swept through the entire city lord's residence. Several majestic palaces, dozens of courtyards and pavilions were immediately blasted into ruins. Debris and dust flew into the sky. This sudden turn of events shocked Bai Yun, Shuangyu and the other 3. Their eyes shone brightly. The mysterious expert really came. That guy really walked into the trap. We finally caught him. Damn it. We guarded the city walls, but we did not detect that person's presence? How did he sneak into the city lord's residence? As these thoughts appeared in their minds, the 4 captains rushed to the city lord's residence at their fastest speed. Whoosh 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 whoosh. 4 streams of light cut through the night sky and surrounded the ruined city lord's residence in the blink of an eye. The 4 stared sharply at the ruins. Their consciousness covered the entire giant holy city. Strong fighting spirit rose from their bodies. The ruins were full of broken walls. The ground was full of holes and gullies. There were also piles of bricks and stones. The 4 scanned with their consciousness and found hundreds of corpses buried in the ruins. Among them there were 12 corpses of black-armored warriors, all of them broken and incomplete. It was obvious that the mysterious expert had already assassinated 12 elite warriors. And all of this was happening right beside the 4 captains, but they knew nothing about it. Thinking of this, the 4 of them felt a chill run down their spines. They had a bad feeling about this. The captain of the White Cloud Fleet held a bronze saber in his right hand and a piece of blood jade in his left hand. He quickly sent out a message. Swish. A speck of blood-red light streaked across the night sky and quickly disappeared into the horizon. He wanted to send a message to the people of Chaoshan City to gather them for help. However, just as the blood light flew into the night sky and was about to disappear, an icy blue sword light suddenly burst forth. Boom! The 30-meter-long icy blue sword light suddenly appeared in the sky and slashed at the blood jade. With a muffled sound, the blood jade sent out by Captain Bai Yun was shattered by the sword light and destroyed on the spot. His communication jade slip was actually intercepted by a mysterious powerhouse. This scene caused the 4 captains' bodies to stiffen, and their faces were filled with shock. However, by intercepting the blood jade, the mysterious expert had also exposed her position and aura. She was above the city, tens of thousands of meters above the ground in the night sky. Even though she was using a secret technique to maintain her invisible state, the 4 captains still locked onto her aura. Over there. We found her. Kill. We can't let her escape. The 4 captains roared in unison, waving their swords and sabers as they charged into the night sky. The 4 of them stabbed out with blood-red light that filled the sky, forming saber light, sword light, spear light and phantom beasts, instantly sealing off an area of 100 miles. The mysterious expert who was invisible was instantly drowned by the blood-red light and could not escape. At the critical moment, she formed a spell with both hands and cast a powerful defensive seal. Ice crystal cage. In an instant, endless icy blue light surged out, condensing into a 100-meter-wide ice crystal ball that protected her. This ice crystal ball was very tough and had a powerful defense. Normally she would use this secret technique to suppress and imprison her opponents. However, at critical moments she could also use it to protect herself like a shield. Bam, bam, bam. The blood-red light, sharp blades and phantom beasts all hit the ice crystal ball. Instantly all the attacks were shattered, turning into billions of blood-red light fragments that scattered in the night sky. The ice crystal ball was also densely covered in cracks and dozens of holes. Of course, the ice crystal ball was still intact and did not collapse on the spot. However, the aftermath of the battle between the two sides overflowed into the giant spirit city, causing the city to suffer a calamity. Rumble. With a series of explosions, dozens of holes appeared in the city. Tens of thousands of houses and buildings were blasted to pieces. The entire city shook and countless gullies appeared in the ground. At least 70 to 80,000 civilians were caught in the aftermath of the battle and were instantly killed. Hundreds of thousands of people were injured by the aftermath of the battle or buried in the ruins. Seeing this, the mysterious expert frowned and a cold light flashed in her clear eyes. Damn those heaven punishers. How could they come so quickly? Did they come here just to kill me? No, we can't fight in the city. Otherwise, giant holy city will be destroyed and millions of civilians will die. First, lure them out of the city and then kill them one by one. She made up her mind and did not linger to fight. Whoosh. Her figure flashed and she teleported 200 miles away from giant holy city. Then she turned into a ball of ice crystal light, flashing in the night sky as she quickly flew into the distance. This scene in the eyes of Bai Yun, Shuangyu and Chongling was invigorating. That guy really ran away. Ah. He knows he is no match for us and is scared out of his wits. Chase, we cannot let him escape. Tonight is the day he dies. We will finish the mission soon. The four captains did not hesitate and used teleportation secret methods to start the chase. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. Everyone flashed and jumped in the sky, closing the distance between them and the mysterious expert. In just 100 breaths, they had chased for almost 10,000 miles and were far away from giant holy city. Only now did the ball of ice crystal light slow down. She seemed to have used up too much power and could not continue to teleport. She could only fly in the night sky. Seeing this, Bai Yun, Shuangyu and Lingyuan excitedly charged over and started a siege. He has no strength to escape. Surround him, don't let him live. Everyone, don't let down your guard, stay vigilant. Chapter 2369. The four captains instinctively thought that the mysterious expert was afraid to fight. She was not afraid. Why would she run? Since she was afraid, it meant that the mysterious expert was not as strong as the four of them combined. Thus, the four were excited and full of fighting spirit. Heaven sealing blood seal. 100 refinement divine spear. Space splitting 1,000 blades slash. Phantom 10 extreme sword. The four captains brandished their sabers and swords, unleashing their ultimate moves to besiege the mysterious expert. The mysterious expert seemed to know that she could not escape and stopped. She looked coldly at the four captains, a faint sneer at the corner of her mouth. Her left palm shot out a monstrous icy blue light that turned into a 1,000-foot-long ice crystal dragon shadow that shot towards Lingyuan and Chongling. Her right hand swung the water reversing sword, sending out thousands of sword lights that covered Bai Yun and Shuangyu. In an instant, the sky full of sword and saber lights collided with a deafening sound. Bam, bam, bam. Countless sword and saber lights collapsed, turning into billions of five-colored fragments that scattered in the night sky. The heaven and earth within a radius of 1,000 miles were all illuminated brightly. Violent and devastating shockwaves spread out in all directions, affecting everything within a radius of 1,000 miles. More than a dozen towering mountains collapsed into ruins on the spot. Dozens of gullies split open in the ground like bottomless abysses. The four captains were sent flying and only stopped after retreating 10 miles. Everyone's breathing was chaotic as they panted violently. Blood appeared in their noses and mouths. Clearly, the four of them had been at a disadvantage in the clash just now, and had suffered light injuries. The icy blue light that enveloped the mysterious expert was also shattered. Her true appearance appeared, standing proudly in the night sky with a cold expression. Only now did the four captains see the appearance of the mysterious expert. It was a human woman. Also, this woman was wearing an icy blue dress. Her face was beautiful and her aura was cold and noble, like a goddess descending to the mortal world. At this moment, Bai Yun, Lingyuan and the others were stunned. Everyone looked at each other and revealed astonished expressions. Then they began to discuss secretly through voice transmission. The mysterious expert is a woman? And such a beautiful woman. It's hard to imagine that this seemingly cold and elegant woman is actually so vicious and merciless. Don't just stand there. Use the blood shadow crystal to record her appearance. The Chongling captain was the first to recover. He hurriedly took out a fist-sized diamond-shaped crystal and cast a spell to activate the formation. Immediately, the rhombus-shaped crystal lit up with a dark red light, recording the appearance of Luo Shui. Chongling wanted to record more scenes so the true face of the mysterious expert could be seen more clearly. However, when Luo Shui sensed his actions, a cold glint flashed in his eyes as he immediately teleported over. Shadowless upstream. Luo Shui let out a light shout as he held the reverse water sword, instantly thrusting out 49 icy blue sword lights. Swish. Swish. Sharp sounds occurred as 49 sword lights crisscrossed towards Chongling. However, the strange thing was that the icy blue sword light disappeared in a flash, as if it had been swallowed by the night sky. Chongling held the blood shadow crystal and was casting a spell to record the scene. When he suddenly saw Luo Shui rushing over, his expression changed and he hurriedly put away the blood shadow crystal. As he retreated, he swung his long blade and sent out 4 enormous blades of bloody light. Yet, as he was focused on blocking the Luo Shui coming from the front, he suddenly felt a cold chill on his back. An icy danger of death suddenly attacked him, causing him to show a shocked expression. Bam bam. In the next moment, more than a dozen invisible sword lights pierced his back. With a muffled sound, blood sprayed. An enormous bloody hole appeared on Chongling's back. The wild impact sent him flying, tumbling towards the Luo Shui. At this moment, another 30 beams of invisible sword light pierced into his face. Another string of muffled sounds occurred. His face and chest were covered in blood and flesh. Even the blood-red scale armor on his chest had been pierced 3 times, and blood was gushing out from it. His body convulsed as he screamed in pain and fell from the sky towards the ground. Bai Yun, Lingyuan and Shuangyu saw with their own eyes that Chongling was seriously injured. Their eyes bulged and they roared as they charged. The 3 of them sent out bloody blades of light. They used a secret method to form the images of vicious beasts that covered the Luo Shui. The Luo Shui had wanted to take the chance to kill Chongling but was blocked by Bai Yun and the others. He could only wave his sword to block. Bam bam bam. Both sides used their ultimate skills and fought fiercely in the sky, causing the sky to tremble. The rays of light were especially dazzling and lit up the night sky. Violent shockwaves spread out like ripples, turning the surroundings into ruins. The seriously injured Chongling fell into the ruins, creating a large cloud of dust. He struggled up, looked down at his blood-stained body and hurriedly took out 2 dark red pills and swallowed them. Then he staggered out of the deep pit and flew into the distance. In his present state, it was not suitable for him to continue fighting. He could only watch from afar and heal his wounds. The blood-colored scale armor on his chest had already been pierced 3 times, leaving 3 cracks on it. If the scale armor shattered, then he would not be able to keep his life and would die on the spot. Swoosh. Chongling flew through the night sky like lightning and fled into the distance. However, he had only flown 10 miles away when he was struck by a violent shockwave. Pew! Chongling spat out a mouthful of blood. His consciousness blurred and he almost fainted. However, the powerful shockwave sent him dozens of miles away. He gritted his teeth and used his strong willpower to maintain his consciousness and continue to fly into the distance. When he was 1,000 miles away and far from the battlefield, he was finally safe. But he had completely lost his will to fight and did not dare to stop. He took out his pitch-black blade and cast a spell to turn it back into a warship 10,000 feet long. He burrowed into the warship and hurriedly ordered the black-armored warriors to steer the warship away from this place. Then he entered a secret room and went into seclusion to heal his wounds. Swoosh! The warship tore through the night sky like lightning and quickly left. At the same time, the battle between Luo Shui, Bai Yun, Shuangyu and Lingyuan reached its most intense moment. The 3 captains surrounded Luo Shui and used all their strength to cast their killing moves, releasing enormous blades of bloody light that covered the sky. Luo Shui was fearless in the face of the three's attacks and could advance and retreat as she pleased. Her left hand occasionally sent out palm shadows, sometimes punching with fist energy, and sometimes using finger techniques to send out dazzling rainbow light. Her right hand swung the reverse water sword and continuously used wondrous sword moves, causing the three captains to be covered in wounds and forced to retreat. The two sides fought fiercely, creating loud booms that shook the world. The earth-shattering shockwaves blasted everything within a radius of several thousand miles into deep pits and ruins. As time passed, the injuries of the three captains worsened. They were forced to retreat and change the battlefield. The more the three fought, the more frightened they became. Their fighting spirit quickly dissipated and they all thought of fleeing. Chapter 2370. Unknowingly, half an hour had passed. Luo Shui and the three captains had exchanged thousands of blows and the battlefield had shifted close to 10,000 miles away. Everywhere they passed by were filled with deep pits and gullies and all the mountains and rivers had turned into ruins. Luo Shui's powers were still strong and her expression was calm. Moreover, there weren't any obvious injuries on her body. The three captains' fates were each more miserable than the other. The silver armors they were wearing had long been destroyed. Ling Yuan's legs had been chopped off and there were at least 40 over wounds on his body which were so deep that his bones could be seen. Shuang Yu's 3 legs and 1 arm were chopped off and there was a bloody hole in the blood-red scale armor on her chest. Bai Yun's injuries were even more shocking. Half of his head was gone and all 4 of his legs were chopped off. Even though they had suffered such serious injuries, they were still alive and could still fly and fight. Such tenacious vitality made Luo Shui feel astonished and shocked. She sighed silently in her heart. The Heaven Punisher clan was indeed a natural battle clan and their battle powers were extremely valiant. If it was a 2nd or 3rd stage realm human martial god, they would have been killed by her long ago. How would they be able to hang on till now? After all, she had not held back and used all her ultimate skills and killer moves. Unfortunately, my previous injuries have yet to fully recover and it has affected my battle powers. If I could maintain my peak condition, I would have killed these 3 fellows long ago. Luo Shui thought in her heart as she continued to chase after the 3 captains. Since she couldn't kill the 3 captains quickly, she would chase after them relentlessly, not giving them any chance to escape. Even if she had to spend a little more time, she had to make them stay. At the same time, Bai Yun, Ling Yuan and Shuang Yu communicated via voice transmission and unanimously decided to escape. In order to successfully escape, the 3 of them drew out their pitch-black battle swords and released 20 black-armored warriors from within. Swoosh 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 swoosh. A total of 60 black-armored warriors appeared in the night sky at the same time, like a patch of black clouds. All of them were fully armed and their bodies were surging with violent battle intent as their eyes were burning with blood-red flames. Everyone listen to my orders, use all your strength to encircle that female martial god. No matter what, even if we die in battle, we must kill her. Kill her. No matter the cost. The 3 captains roared out their orders. The 60 black-armored warriors responded with a roar that shook the heavens. They all rushed towards Luo Shui without any regard for their own safety, brandishing their spears and halberds, thrusting out bloody light that covered the sky and covered the earth. Instantly, Luo Shui was surrounded, and his figure was drowned by the blood light that filled the sky. Even though the black-armored soldiers were only rank 3 to rank 5 martial sages, the black-armored soldiers were extremely powerful. However, there were many of them and the might of their frenzied charge was extremely powerful. Even the martial god had to temporarily avoid them. Luo Shui's face darkened as a cold light flashed in her eyes. Her left palm was like a saber, slashing out dozens of icy blue light blades. His right hand waved the reverse water divine sword, thrusting out a sky full of cold stars. Ping ping ping. Light blades and cold stars blossomed in the night sky, sprinkling down on the crowd, instantly creating a loud explosion. At least a dozen black-armored warriors were chopped into pieces on the spot, dying without a complete corpse. However, the scene of shredded flesh and blood falling from the sky not only failed to intimidate the remaining black-armored warriors, it made them even crazier. Kill. Kill her. Even if I die, I will drag her down with me. For the glory of our race. More than 40 black-armored warriors roared as their blood boiled, charging towards Luo Shui without any fear of death. While Luo Shui was fighting with the black-armored warriors, Bai Yun, Ling Yuan, and Shuang Yu quietly executed the invisibility technique, turning around and fleeing. When they had released those 60 black-armored warriors, it was destined that those warriors would be sent to their deaths as cannon fodder. The purpose of these warriors was to help the 3 captains stall for time, giving them a chance to escape. Swish swish swish. Bai Yun, Ling Yuan, and Shuang Yu streaked across the night sky as fast as lightning, fleeing towards the northeast. After a few breaths, they had fled 1,000 miles away and were about to take out their battleships. However, just as the 3 of them were about to cast their techniques, they suddenly felt an icy cold air coming from behind them. Before they could react, they were pierced by 3 icy blue sword lights. Ping ping ping. With a loud bang, the 3 captains were sent flying by the giant swords, blood spurting out from their bodies. They flew for 20 miles before stopping in the night sky, hurriedly turning their heads to look behind them. In the night sky 20 miles away, Luo Shui stood with her sword in hand, her expression as cold as ice. Not far from her, the 3 battleships had already returned to normal, becoming 10,000 feet long as they floated in the night sky. And in the night sky 1,000 miles away, there were only 10 some black-armored warriors left, scurrying around like headless flies. Seeing this scene, Bai Yun, Ling Yuan, and Shuang Yu were filled with shock and they couldn't help but gasp. My heavens! In just a few breaths she killed more than 40 warriors? That damned lowly slave, how could she have come so quickly? This crazy woman, does she really want to kill us all and leave us no way out? These thoughts flashed through the minds of the 3, and their hearts surged with grief, indignation, and despair. Now there were only 2 choices before them. They could either charge in front of Luo Shui and risk their lives to enter the battleships, relying on the battleships to block her attacks. Or they could abandon the 3 battleships and flee for their lives. As for fighting Luo Shui to the end, that was absolutely impossible. As the 3 of them were hesitating, Luo Shui's figure vanished. Chilling star instant kill. Bish. She transformed into an icy star and instantly appeared in front of Ling Yuan, releasing the most dazzling light like a shooting star. Boom. With a massive boom that shook the heavens, the chilling star pierced through Ling Yuan's chest and exploded. Ling Yuan's body exploded into a rain of blood that scattered across the night sky. Bai Yun and Shuang Yu stiffened at this sight, fear flashing in their eyes. The 2 of them no longer hesitated, using a teleportation technique to turn and flee. At the same time, the 2 of them used their divine sense to order the people on the battleships to immediately drive the battleships away. Whoosh, whoosh. 2 bloody lights flashed in the night sky. Bai Yun and Shuang Yu fled northeast and northwest respectively, each teleporting 300 miles away. Luo Shui did not hesitate either, teleporting 300 miles to catch up to Shuang Yu and thrusting her sword. Boom. 1,000-foot-long icy blue sword light pierced through Shuang Yu's body, causing it to collapse into pieces of flesh and blood. Luo Shui did not stop, using another teleportation technique to pursue Bai Yun. The 2 of them were separated by 1,000 miles, constantly flashing in the night sky as they leapt forward. One fled for her life, the other pursued relentlessly. Every time their figures flashed, they would cross more than 300 miles. As time passed, the 2 of them drew closer and closer. Half an hour later, Luo Shui chased for more than 10,000 miles before finally catching up to Bai Yun. She swung her sword and shattered him. At this point she had killed 3 of the 4 martial god realm captains. Only Chongling had fled ahead of time, but he was also heavily injured, a tragic sight. Chapter 2371. Pity. When Luo Shui returned to the battlefield, the 3 warship captains had fled long ago. She put away the space rings of the 3 captains and turned to leave. While she had won the battle tonight and killed the 3 martial god realm captains, her injuries had not healed. However, she had not fully recovered from her injuries to begin with, and she had used up too much of her divine power, so she was already mentally exhausted. She decided to leave Giant Spirit City and find a safe place to recover her Shin power. Once her Shin power recovered, she would carry out the assassination mission. As for the space rings of the 3 captains, she would leave them until she had time in the future to check them. She believed that since the 3 captains led over 100 martial sages, they must have a lot of resources. Also, she might be able to find some secrets from the 3 space rings and deepen her understanding of the Heaven Punisher race. The chaos in Giant Spirit City lasted for several hours before calming down. First, the city master's mansion was destroyed and half of the city turned to ruins. Then there was an earth-shaking explosion outside the city and divine light shrouded the sky. These scenes made the people of Giant Spirit City realize that there had been a great battle between powerhouses. The next morning, people found that the foreign city master who controlled Giant Spirit City had disappeared. Even those mysterious and powerful black-armored guards were left with only a few of them. Therefore, the news that Giant Spirit City had been attacked and that the outsiders had suffered heavy casualties immediately spread out. It was early in the morning and the sun was rising. Chao Mountain City was calm. The entire city had just woken up. At this time, a pitch-black warship cut through the sky and arrived above Chao Mountain City. Whoosh! The warship suddenly shrunk 10,000 times and turned into a pitch-black sword. A heaven punisher covered in blood appeared in the sky. He was Chongling, who had escaped early and luckily survived. He carried the pitch-black sword on his back and hurriedly landed in Chao Mountain City and the city master's mansion. The 7 Fiends captain who controlled Chao Mountain City and the 3 captains hiding here immediately sensed his presence and hurriedly ran out. Whoosh 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 whoosh. At the gates of the city master's mansion, the 7 Fiends captain and the other 3 stopped Chongling. When everyone saw Chongling covered in blood and wounds, their pupils contracted and they were puzzled. Captain Chongling, what happened to you? How did you get so heavily injured? Who did this? Chongling, weren't you hiding in Giant Spirit City with Captain Bai Yun? What the hell is going on? Where are Bai Yun and Ling Yuan? The 4 captains asked about the situation with great concern. Chongling waved his hand and said with a hateful expression, I healed for a night in the warship to recover to my present state. If it wasn't for that, I would have been unconscious a long time ago. How could I have escaped here? It's a long story. I'll explain it to you once we enter the main hall. The 7 Fiends captain nodded in agreement and hurriedly led Chongling into the discussion hall. Then Chongling recounted what had happened last night. After the 4 captains heard this, they were all shocked and their eyes flashed with anger. Captain Bai Yun guessed correctly. The mysterious expert really attacked Giant Holy City. Chongling, there is only one mysterious expert and a human woman in a blue dress? Do you have a portrait of that woman? Do you know this person's identity? Chongling, you fled with serious injuries. What about Captain Bai Yun, Ling Yuan and Shuang Yu? How are they? Everyone asked at once and Chongling felt a headache. He took a deep breath and answered methodically, the identity of the blue-dressed woman is unknown, but I used the blood shadow crystal to remember her appearance. I will give the blood shadow crystal to you. Try to find this person's identity. As to Bai Yun, Ling Yuan and Shuang Yu, when I fled, they were fighting with the blue-dressed woman. I have not contacted them and do not know their situation. Then Chongling took out the blood shadow crystal from his spatial ring and gave it to the 7 Fiends captain. The 7 Fiends captain took the blood shadow crystal and said with a serious expression, do not worry, I will do my best to find this person's identity. The most important thing now is to contact Bai Yun, Ling Yuan and Shuang Yu and ask about their situation. So the other 3 captains took out blood jades and sent messages to Bai Yun and the others. After sending out the messages, everyone could only wait patiently for a response. Taking advantage of this time, the 7 Fiends opened the blood shadow crystal and projected a blood-colored screen of light in front of everyone. A blurry image appeared in the screen of light. A young woman in a blue dress stood in the night sky with a cold expression and murderous aura. The image lasted for a breath and then quickly dissipated. However, this was enough for the captains to see the blue-dressed woman's appearance. Everyone furrowed their brows and began to discuss with a grave expression. As expected, there is only one person and a beautiful human woman. This woman is so strong. She must be one of the strongest people of Shenwu continent. Supposedly, Shenwu continent has 3 martial gods. Of them, only the Luoshui martial god is a woman. The 7 Fiends captain nodded and said confidently, this blue-dressed woman is most likely the Luoshui martial god. Chongling's lips curled into a bitter smile. He said in a low voice, even if we know that the mysterious expert is the Luoshui martial god, so what? This woman is terrifyingly strong and moves alone. She appears and disappears unpredictably. We cannot surround and kill her with just the few of us. I fear that only General Dragon subduing can kill her. Hearing that, the captains looked even more awful. Their hearts were heavier and more depressed. They had accepted the mission with confidence, but now they had fallen to such a state. If they could not kill the Luoshui martial god, they would be laughed at by Yu and the other captains. The Seven Fiends captain saw that morale was low and urged, "Do not be discouraged. The result is still unknown. Let's wait patiently. Maybe Bai Yun, Ling Yuan, and Shuang Yu have already killed the Luoshui martial god?" The other captains nodded and remained silent. Soon 15 minutes passed. The message blood jade that everyone had hoped for did not appear. Bai Yun, Ling Yuan and Shuang Yu did not respond. As time passed, the unease in everyone's hearts grew stronger and their expressions grew more serious. 2 hours later, 3 warships flew above Chao Mountain City and stopped. The doors of the warships opened and several black-armored soldiers flew out and hurriedly ran into the city master's office. They charged into the discussion hall and knelt down to report the situation to the Seven Fiends, Chongling and the others. "Captains, Captain Bai Yun was killed by a mysterious expert. The blood spirit imprint has dissipated. The blood spirit imprint of the Lingyuan ship has also dissipated. Captain Lingyuan has also died. Captain Shuang Yu has also died in battle. Captains, please take revenge for us." Hearing this news, the Seven Fiends, Chongling and the others widened their eyes, their faces ashen. Chapter 2372. The sudden grievous news caused everyone to be inexplicably shocked. The blood spirit mark was equivalent to the soul jade tablet that humans were skilled in. Only when one was completely dead would the jade tablet shatter. Similarly, after the experts of the heaven punishment race died, the blood spirit mark would dissipate. The discussion hall was deathly silent. Everyone's expressions were ugly and the atmosphere was oppressive. The black-armored soldiers who had reported the news tactfully retreated to the side and remained silent. A long time later, the Seven Fiends spoke and broke the silence first. "I really didn't expect that the strength of that mysterious powerhouse would be so formidable. 4 captains went to Giant Spirit City to ambush her. Not only were they unable to kill her, 3 died and 1 was wounded. After this seat took control of Chao Mountain City, I have been studying history books to understand the situation of Shenwu continent. According to what this seat knows, the leaders of the 3 divine kingdoms are all 5th-level martial gods. Moreover, they had already become deities several thousand years ago and had accumulated an extremely deep foundation. It seems that the mysterious expert must be the Luoshui martial god." Chongling and the other 3 captains nodded in agreement. One of them said worriedly, "Since the Luoshui martial god is so strong, then I fear we will not be able to complete our mission." Chongling nodded and said, "Yes, this seat is seriously injured and can only go into seclusion to heal. The 3 of you are not a match for her, so do not continue." The Seven Fiends said solemnly, "The Luoshui martial god is not someone we can defeat. Our top priority is to report this news to Deputy General Yu and have him deal with it." Chongling and the 3 captains immediately had ugly expressions. Humiliation and embarrassment flashed through their eyes. The 4 shook their heads and rejected this suggestion in unison. "No, there is no need to inform Yu of this matter. He wants to see us make fools of ourselves. I think Yu guessed long ago that the mysterious expert is the Luoshui martial god. He is purposely tricking us, this damned bastard. City Master Seven Fiends, report this matter directly to General Dragon Subduing. Within Yu's strength, he is not a match for the Luoshui martial god. Only General Dragon Subduing can kill the Luoshui martial god." Since the 4 captains had unanimously agreed, the Seven Fiends would not be stubborn. He nodded and said, "All right, then we'll do as you say. I'll send out a message to report the news to General Dragon Subduing. Captain Chongling, your wounds are serious. This seat will immediately arrange a secret room for you to use your powers to heal." After saying that, he warned the other 3 captains, "The 3 of you will stay in Chaoshan City and temporarily put down that mission. After I report the news, we will see what arrangements General Dragon Subduing makes." The 3 captains had no objections. They cupped their hands and left the hall. Chongling did not waste time and hurriedly went into seclusion to heal. As for the White Cloud, Lingyuan and Shuang Yu battleships, they landed in Chaoshan City and waited for news. 2 days passed quickly. The 7 Fiends finally received General Dragon Subduing's message. The Dragon Subduing General indicated that he already knew what had happened. Since the mysterious expert was the Luoshui martial god, She would definitely die if she dared to oppose the Heaven Punisher race. Not only that, but her Luoshui divine kingdom would also be destroyed. However, the Heaven Punisher race had yet to gain a foothold. The current mission was to first defend the 72 cities, then take care of Pillar of Heaven's mountain, and finally attack the Luoshui divine kingdom. General Dragon Subduing decided to personally go to the 72 cities and take care of the Luoshui martial god. He had already ordered the captains to be more alert and closely monitor the movements of the Luoshui martial god. The 7 fiends, Chongling and the others could not just sit and wait for death. They had to actively investigate the Luoshui martial god. This way, General Dragon Subduing could quickly find the Luoshui martial god and kill him when he reached the 72 cities. After reading the message in the Blood Jade, the 7 fiends hurriedly notified Chongling and the 3 captains. So Chongling continued to heal in the city master's mansion. The other 3 captains left Chaoshan City with many scouts to search for news of the Luoshui martial god. 3 days later in the morning, in a mountain peak in a vast mountain range, Luoshui sat cross-legged in a dark cave and slowly finished her cultivation. After 3 days and 3 nights of cultivation, her wounds had healed and her Shin power had returned to its peak. She slowly opened her eyes and murmured to herself, 3 days have passed. The news of the battle at Giant Spirit City should have spread through the 72 cities. The experts of the Heaven Punisher race must hate me to the bone and are searching for me? I have to be more careful in the future. How smart was the Luoshui martial god? Of course she could guess that the experts of the Heaven Punisher race would form a net and swear to kill her. But she was not worried or fearful. With her strength and methods, even if she was surrounded by 6 or 7 martial god realm captains, she could easily escape even if she was not a match. I wonder how Tianxing and Yunyao's wounds have healed? Luoshui frowned and murmured worriedly. Moments later she gathered her thoughts and flashed out of the cave. Facing the rising sun, she stepped into the sky and headed northwest 100 li with each step. This time her target was Chaoshan City. Although she knew that the Heaven Punishers would definitely gather many elites to search for her and kill her, she knew that the Heaven Punishers would definitely gather many elites. But she believed that the leader of the Heaven Punisher race would not ambush Chaoshan City. After all, she had just ambushed Giant Spirit City. How could she ambush Chaoshan City, which was the nearest city? She would definitely flee and ambush other cities. This was a principle that everyone knew. It was also a habitual thought. But Luoshui wanted to do the opposite. False and true, true and false. Only then could the 72 cities fall into chaos and panic. Only then could the army of the Heaven Punisher race have no time to attack Pillar of Heaven's mountains and be tired of defending against her attacks. She was trying her best to buy time for Pillar of Heaven's mountains. 10 hours later it was evening. When the sun was setting, Luoshui quietly sneaked into Chaoshan City. Before entering the city, she circled the city twice and used a secret technique to check repeatedly. After confirming that there were no large groups of martial gods ambushing in the city, she began to move. Bold plans and cautious actions. This was her way of doing things. After sneaking into Chaoshan City, Luoshui moved stealthily. She only used 2 hours to figure out the situation in the city. In the city governor's mansion, there was a martial god and more than 100 black armored warriors of the martial sage realm. On the surrounding city walls, there were more than a dozen black armored warriors hiding. She thought for a while and understood that the 100 black armored warriors were most likely the old subordinates of Bai Yun, Lingyuan, Shuangyu and the others. In the dead of night, Luoshui finally made her move. She assassinated the dozen black armored warriors guarding the city walls before sneaking into the city governor's mansion. After entering the city governor's mansion, she appeared like a phantom and quickly killed one black armored warrior after another. An hour had passed and she had killed more than 40 black armored warriors. Chapter 2373. Whoosh. Bang. With the sharp sound of something breaking through the air, a dark red flower of blood bloomed in the night sky. Instantly, the tranquility of Chaoshan City was broken. The city guards guarding the surrounding city walls were immediately startled awake and took out their swords to search for the enemy. The guards of the city lord's mansion, more than 100 black armored warriors, quickly gathered in the plaza. The 7 fiends rushed to the plaza with a gloomy expression. After counting the number of people, they discovered that 48 black armored warriors were missing. He immediately frowned and his eyes became malicious. Damn it! 48 people are missing without a sound? Must be that bitch Luo Shui. She has already infiltrated the city and is assassinating our warriors. The 7 fiends gnashed their teeth in anger, and their fists creaked as they clenched them. However, other than a large number of guards and warriors gathered in the plaza, the city was quiet as if nothing had happened. The 7 fiends knew that martial god Luo Shui must be hiding in the shadows, ready to attack at any time. Thus he ordered in a low voice, "All guards and warriors form teams of 10 and seal off the entire city lord's mansion. Tonight I swear that I will drag Luo Shui out and tear her to pieces. I don't believe that no matter how strong she is, can she defeat so many elite warriors?" The black-armored warriors acknowledged the order in unison. In a short 10 breaths, they had divided into more than a dozen teams and surrounded the city lord's mansion. The 7 fiends personally used a secret technique to search the entire city lord's mansion. They had to find Luo Shui even if they had to dig 3 feet into the ground. However, an hour passed. The 7 fiends used the technique dozens of times and turned the entire city lord's mansion upside down, but they still could not find Luo Shui. Instead, they found many black-armored warriors' corpses as well as broken remains and remnants. Reality proved that Luo Shui had already escaped from the city lord's mansion. The 7 fiends felt defeated, angry and humiliated. However, he was helpless and did not dare to remove the defenses, afraid that Luo Shui would come back. Just like that, the 100 black-armored warriors sealed off the city lord's mansion. He also rested his head on his spear and did not dare to relax. Unknowingly, an entire night passed. When the sun rose, a new day had arrived. The 7 fiends and the black-armored warriors all felt deeply exhausted. Their tense minds also relaxed. According to the previous example, Luo Shui only launched assassinations in the middle of the night. Perhaps she had some kind of concealment technique that allowed her to be even more concealed in the middle of the night. Now that the sky is bright, she should have left long ago and won't appear again. After weighing the pros and cons for a moment, the 7 evils ordered the black-armored warriors to withdraw their defenses and return to their residences to rest. When the black-armored warriors returned to their quarters, he also returned to his study to deal with government affairs. However, he had never expected that Luo Shui had not left Chaoshan City. She had been hiding in the city, monitoring the city lord's mansion's movements. When everyone relaxed their vigilance, she made her move again, launching a silent assassination. The previous scene repeated itself. In the short span of an hour, another 30 or so black-armored warriors were killed. Finally, when Luo Shui attacked a certain room, he encountered 4 black-armored warriors together. She instantly killed 3 black-armored warriors. The 4th soldier was seriously injured, but he didn't die on the spot. He let out a heart-wrenching scream. The sudden commotion awakened the 7 evils and the black-armored warriors. More than 80 black-armored warriors rushed to the scene of the incident and surrounded the palace. The 7 evils also flew into the sky and used his divine sense to envelop the entire palace. He immediately detected a powerful ripple of divine power in a certain room on the 3rd floor of the palace. Thus, he unhesitatingly pulled out his saber and slashed out a 100-meter-long blood-colored saber beam. Boom! With a massive boom, the destructive saber beam cleaved the entire palace into 2 halves, sending shards of stone flying everywhere. A violent shockwave spread out in all directions. The palace was blasted into smithereens, collapsing into rubble. Originally, there were still 10-odd black-armored warriors in the palace, as well as several dozen human guards and maids. After being struck by the 7 evils, those human guards and maids were all dead. The 10-odd black-armored warriors were also heavily injured and buried in the rubble. At the same time, a dazzling icy light shot out of the rubble and stabbed at the 7 evils. Just in time. The 7 evils growled, his expression savage as he sneered, "This time you've been surrounded. You won't be able to escape." As he spoke, he gripped his saber tightly with both hands and slashed out 3 massive blades of blood-colored light at that icy light. Bam! 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 The 3 blades of blood-colored light collided with the icy light, creating a thunderous boom. The blood-colored light and icy blue light shattered at the same time, turning into billions of pieces. The violent shockwave swept through half of the city. In a flash, the city lord's residence, filled with palaces and pavilions, was reduced to rubble. Within a radius of 50 miles, all the houses and buildings had collapsed, and the ground was split open, leaving behind numerous deep ravines. 300,000 innocent civilians were blasted into smithereens on the spot. Even among the black-armored warriors, more than 40 of them were injured and sent flying, covered in blood. Endless smoke and dust billowed high into the sky, covering the sky and the sun. The 7 evils were only third-level martial gods and naturally were not a match for Luo Shui. He was sent flying 10,000 feet away, blood flowing from his mouth and nose as his chest rose and fell rapidly. At this time he saw a dark red bloody light charge out of the rubble. Whoosh! That bloody light was Chongling. Previously he had been healing in the secret room of the city lord's residence. Now that the city lord's residence was destroyed, he was also affected and naturally fled in panic. Yet just as Chongling flew into the sky and was about to fly out of the city through the dust, that bone-chilling sword light appeared again. Whoosh! Luo Shui merged his body into the reverse water sword and turned into a 100-meter-long icy blue sword that shot towards Chongling. Chongling's injuries were too severe and he was too weak to dodge. With a muffled bang, he was struck by the giant ice blue sword and exploded into a rain of blood on the spot. The 7 evils saw Chongling being killed in an instant and did not have time to stop it. His eyes bulged in anger as he roared hoarsely, "Everyone attack together, kill Luo Shui." As he roared, he swung his saber and charged bravely at Luo Shui. The dozens of black-armored warriors around the city lord's residence attacked Luo Shui with all their strength, ignoring their injuries. But Luo Shui did not linger. After killing Chongling in one move, she passed through the dust and flew out of the city. Whoosh! In the blink of an eye, the icy blue sword flew 200 miles away and escaped Chao Mountain City. They had finally ambushed Luo Shui. How could the 7 evils let go of this chance? He unhesitatingly gave chase with dozens of black-armored warriors. Everyone flew across the sky in a grandiose manner. Soon they were thousands of miles away. At this time Luo Shui's ice crystal sword suddenly stopped. Chapter 2374. Bam! The 7 fiends were unable to evade in time and were pierced by the ice crystal sword. It was then that he realized that Luo Shui was not trying to escape but was luring him out of the city. He thought that he could kill Luo Shui on the spot with his elite warriors. But now he knew that Luo Shui did not put it to heart at all. The so-called escape was just to leave Chaoshan City to avoid harming the innocent. Unfortunately, it was too late for the 7 fiends to understand this. His burly body was instantly pierced by the ice crystal greatsword, and he flew backwards in a sorry state. The blood-colored scales on his chest crumbled and his internal organs were crushed into pieces. The 7 fiends were still in midair when he lost all signs of life and turned into a corpse. Plop! The corpse fell from the sky and crashed onto the mountain peak below, giving off a dull thud. At the same time, 80 over black-armored warriors had finally arrived at the scene. Their battle intent was high as they charged over with murderous intent only to see the 7 fiends' corpses falling from the sky. Instantly, everyone felt as though a basin of cold water had been poured over their heads. The impassioned fighting spirit and the incomparably violent killing intent instantly vanished into thin air. Everyone stopped and stared blankly in the sky, their hearts filled with shock. They looked at each other not knowing what to do. Luo Shui did not waste any time as he charged over at lightning speed. Swoosh! The 100-meter-long ice crystal sword pierced through the sky like lightning and pierced into the crowd. Instantly, 20 over black-armored warriors were killed by the huge sword as they turned into minced meat. The rest of them were scared out of their wits as they let out terrified and desperate roars as they turned to escape in a fluster. Swoosh! The ice crystal sword pierced through the sky and once again slashed into the disorderly crowd. A dull thud was heard and another 10 over black-armored warriors were killed on the spot. Following that, Luo Shui began his pursuit as he chased after the black-armored warriors in the sky, flying back to Chaoshan City. The 30 over black-armored warriors who were lucky enough to survive were all scared out of their wits as they fled in a fluster. Their strong will to live made them explode with unlimited potential as they teleported continuously in the sky. But facing Luo Shui, who was a 5th-degree realm martial god, they had no chance of survival. Within a short span of 100 breaths, Luo Shui had killed all the black-armored warriors. Not a single person could escape back to Haoshan City. When Luo Shui returned to the city, all of Chao Mountain City was in chaos. Hundreds of thousands of warriors and commoners fled in panic, rushing towards the city gate like a tide. Luo Shui ignored the chaos in the city and quietly returned to the ruins of the city lord's mansion. She released her divine sense and searched through the ruins for a moment. Then she found 3 pitch-black cold swords. These 3 swords were all divine artifacts, but they were actually transformed from 3 battleships. Luo Shui kept the 3 swords into his spatial ring, keeping them for future research. Then she used an invisibility technique and quietly left Chaoshan City. In today's battle she was not injured and did not use up too much energy. Her divine power was still abundant, so she didn't waste any time and quickly rushed to the next city. In the next 4 days she attacked 3 more cities. In total they had killed 1 Martial God Realm captain and more than 40 Martial Sage Realm black-armored soldiers. However, when she arrived at the 4th city, she realized that the situation was not good. 6 martial gods and almost 200 black-armored warriors had gathered in the city. Moreover, those martial gods and black-armored warriors had all used concealment techniques to hide. It was obvious that Luo Shui had attacked several cities in the vicinity. The martial gods and martial sages of the surrounding cities had calculated that her next target would be here, so they had rushed here to ambush her. Fortunately, Luo Shui was cautious. Before carrying out the assassination plan, she had investigated the situation in the city. If she had rushed in, she would have been surrounded by many experts. At that time, even if she didn't die in battle, she would have been seriously injured to escape. Therefore, Luo Shui quietly left the city and searched for her next target. In the 9 Heavens 10 Absolutes Tower, the 6th level of the dark space, Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao sat cross-legged in the dark space, their bodies covered in 5-colored spiritual light. Today was the 15th day since they had entered the divine pagoda to recuperate. Only half a month had passed in the outside world, but the 2 of them had been in seclusion in the 6th level of the divine pagoda for 2 years. After 2 years of treatment, Ji Tianxing's injuries had finally healed. His magic power had completely recovered and he had reached his peak state. Moreover, his martial arts foundation had become more solid and his magic power had become more profound. As for Yun Yao's injuries, they had already healed a year ago. In the following year, she had been cultivating and working hard to break through to the 8th level martial sage realm. Although she had not broken through to the 8th level, her strength had doubled and her magic power had become more vigorous. If she was given another 2 years, she would definitely be able to break through. However, she knew that the situation at the Pillar of Heaven's mountains was critical and she could not delay any longer. Swoosh! The 5-colored spiritual light that enveloped her body dissipated and she had ended her cultivation. After opening her eyes, she stood up and flew to Ji Tianxing's side. Ji Tianxing had a telepathic connection with her and hurriedly stopped his cultivation and ended his seclusion to recuperate. Yun Yao looked at him with concern and asked, "Tianxing, looking at your complexion and soul aura, have you recovered to normal?" Ji Tianxing nodded and said calmly, "We have been recuperating for 2 years and half a month has passed in the outside world. I wonder if the Pillar of Heaven's mountains is safe? Didn't you lead the fleet to attack the Pillar of Heaven's mountains?" Yun Yao also looked worried and said, "There is no time to lose. Let's hurry back to the Pillar of Heaven's mountains." Ji Tianxing did not hesitate and brought her out of the dark space and returned to the 5th level of the Holy Pagoda. The 2 of them stood on the demon god altar and Ji Tianxing opened the great Luo god array. Swoosh! A white light teleportation door appeared on the altar. The 2 of them stepped into the light door and left the Holy Pagoda. In the next moment, the 2 of them appeared in the 5 elements world and stood on the peak of a barren mountain. Yun Yao summoned the glazed fire dragon and brought her and Ji Tianxing back to the Pillar of Heaven's mountains. On the way, Ji Tianxing took out 2 communication jade slips and sent them to Huanglong Daoist and Luo Shui to ask about the situation. It didn't take long for Huanglong to send back a message. "Master, don't worry. Everything is fine at the Pillar of Heaven's mountains. The alien fleet has not attacked. In addition, I've found out that a mysterious expert has appeared in the 72 cities. This expert appears and disappears unpredictably. He has killed several martial gods and a large number of black-armored soldiers, but he hasn't been caught." After hearing this news, Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao heaved a sigh of relief. Both of them could guess that the so-called mysterious expert must be martial god Luo Shui. As expected, Ji Tianxing soon received a reply from Luo Shui. "Tianxing, I'm very relieved that you and Yun Yao have recovered from your injuries. Now I've assassinated the experts of the Heaven Punishers in the 72 cities and created chaos, causing many experts to surround me. Their plan to attack the Pillar of Heaven's mountains has been disrupted by me. Chapter 2375. Luo Shui was alone, creating chaos in the 72 cities filled with martial gods. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao were well aware of how dangerous her situation was. Therefore the two of them would never let Luo Shui fight alone. They stayed in the divine pagoda to cultivate in seclusion. They even changed their route and no longer rushed back to the Pillar of Heaven's mountains. Instead they went straight to the 72 cities. On the way to the 72 cities, Ji Tianxing sent a message to Huanglong Daoist, ordering him to guard the Pillar of Heaven's mountains well. Then he sent a message to Luo Shui, asking about her situation and plans. Luo Shui told him and Yun Yao about what had happened. She also suggested that it was best to act separately. It would be better to restrain the foreign race experts in the 72 cities. Ji Tianxing expressed his agreement, so he didn't meet up with her. He and Yun Yao planned to rush directly to the 72 cities to carry out the assassination mission. The ruins of God was not far from the 72 cities. The glazed fire dragon flew for a day and a night before arriving in the 72 cities. The two of them entered a 1,000-year-old ancient city called Yang'an. This city was in the southernmost part of the 72 cities. There were spies from the Pillar of Heaven's mountains hidden in it. Before entering Yang'an city, Ji Tianxing had contacted the spies in the city and understood the situation in the city. There were 15 martial sage realm black armored guards in the city. There was also a martial god realm captain previously. However, after Luo Shui created chaos, the captain left Yang'an city. According to the spies' speculations, the captain might have met up with the other captains and ambushed Luo Shui. When Ji Tianxing heard this news, he made Yang'an city his first assassination target. In the evening, the glazed fire dragon stopped in the mountain range outside the city. Yun Yao kept the glazed fire dragon. She and Ji Tianxing used the invisibility technique and quietly sneaked into Yang'an city. Yang'an city was protected by a sacred array with a radius of 200 miles. However, Ji Tianxing easily broke the array and opened a hidden gap. When he and Yun Yao sneaked into the city, they were not discovered by anyone and did not raise any alarm. The two of them quietly shuttled through the city, silently approaching the city lord's mansion. As time passed, night fell. A soundless assassination began. Ji Tianxing's consciousness locked onto several black-armored guards in a certain palace. One of them was cultivating in an underground secret room, trying to break through to the rank 4 martial sage realm. Shua. Ji Tianxing silently appeared in the corner of the secret room and launched an attack from the darkness. Swish. With a flick of his right hand he shot out a 3-inch-long golden flying dagger. A golden light flashed and the flying dagger instantly pierced through the black-armored guard's chest. A bloody hole the size of a fist appeared on the cold, pitch-black armor. The terrifying god-slaying flying knife shattered the blood-colored scales on the man's chest and flew out from his back. The black-armored guard died on the spot. Even at the moment of his death he still didn't understand what was going on. He also couldn't guess who the person who had tried to assassinate him was. When the black-armored guard's corpse slowly fell to the ground, Ji Tianxing also left the secret room and quietly rushed to the next one. In a certain room on the second floor of the palace, this person was learning the human race's language and writing to understand the situation in Shenwu continent. Ji Tianxing silently appeared in the room and had just raised his hand to shoot out the god-slaying flying knife when this person was alerted. He had a premonition that death was imminent and he didn't even turn his head. Instead he subconsciously curled up and moved to the side. Such sharp intuition and decisive response made Ji Tianxing have a whole new level of respect for him. However, all of this was futile against the god-slaying flying knife. Swish! A golden light flashed and the 3-inch-long god-slaying flying knife instantly pierced through the black-armored guard's back. The flying knife pierced through the black armor and also destroyed the scales on his chest. His life force and his lifetime's worth of strength collapsed at the same time. He didn't even have time to scream before he was instantly killed. The flying knife circled around the room once before returning to Ji Tianxing's hand. When the guard's corpse fell to the ground, Lu Yin turned around and left the room to search for his next target. At the same time, Yun Yao was on the other side of the city lord's manor, where she had dealt with 2 black-armored guards. She had also stealthily appeared and used her shadowless twin swords to instantly kill her targets. The husband and wife split up and quickly killed one black-armored guard after another. After a full 100 breaths of time, the two of them had killed 10 people without making a single sound. Within the city lord's manor, there was only one black-armored guard left, and he was handling some matters in the study. Ji Tianxing was the first to arrive, and he shot out the god-slaying flying knife and easily killed this person. The husband and wife then quietly left the manor and headed to the north and south gates respectively to assassinate the remaining 4 black-armored guards. The 4 guards were on duty today and they were overseeing the north and south gates. They commanded a large number of city guards and were in charge of maintaining the city's great defensive array. When Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao arrived, the 4 black-armored guards were patrolling the city walls with vigilant expressions. Even so, they could not escape the fate of being killed. Whoosh! A ray of golden light streaked across the night sky on the north city wall. The god-slaying flying knife pierced through the chest of a black-armored guard, instantly killing him. This person's body shook and he fell onto the city wall, dying in front of everyone's eyes. There were hundreds of city guards in the surroundings who witnessed this scene with their own eyes. They were all shocked and exclaimed. However, they were not afraid or depressed. Instead, they were secretly delighted. After all, these ordinary city guards were all human martial artists. They were only forced to surrender and submit to the Heaven Punisher race's ferocious might. Soon, a ray of golden light lit up on the west city wall and disappeared in the night sky. The black-armored guard was reprimanding the city guards in a dignified manner when he suddenly died. The city guards, who were filled with fear after being reprimanded, were dumbfounded and could not help but gasp. Just like that, Ji Tianxing easily killed 2 targets. Throughout the entire process he did not show his face. He only secretly released the god-slaying flying knife. Soon Yun Yao also completed her mission and successfully killed 2 black-armored guards. At this point all 15 soldiers of the Heaven Punisher race in Yang'an City had been killed. To Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao, this was not the first time they had assassinated the elites of the Heaven Punisher race. However, there was no doubt that this was their most successful assassination. After all, both of them had reached the 7th rank martial sage realm and their combat strength was comparable to that of a half-step martial god. The two of them quickly met up and silently exited the city. Originally, Ji Tianxing had intended to rescue the city masters, guards, and nobles who had been controlled by the Heaven Punisher race. He could use the power of the Heaven Patching Pearl to remove the soul-controlling power in their bodies. However, Yun Yao had dissuaded him. There was no need to do so and waste time. After all, they could only assassinate the elites of the Heaven Punisher race and could not truly save Yang'an City. They had to chase the army of the Heaven Punisher race out of the 72 cities so that they could be saved. Otherwise, once Ji Tianxing removed the soul-controlling technique, the elites of the Heaven Punisher race would rush over and use the soul-controlling technique again. Chapter 2376. In the next 5 days, Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao attacked 7 cities consecutively. There were more than 130 Heaven Punisher warriors in these 7 cities. However, without exception all of them were killed by the 2 of them. Moreover, the assassination process was very easy and caught the enemy off guard. Ji Tianxing did not need to show himself. He secretly released the god-slaying flying dagger and easily took the lives of the Heaven Punisher warriors. This way he would not consume much of his dermic powers. He would not feel tired or slack off even after 5 days of continuous operation. On the morning of the 6th day, the sun rose from the east and golden sunlight shone on the earth. Huai's city, which was located in the mountains, welcomed a new day. At the same time, 2 uninvited guests were welcomed. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao quietly broke the city defense array and sneaked into the city. As usual, the 2 of them remained invisible and silently entered the city governor's mansion. However, Ji Tianxing suddenly discovered that there were not only more than 10 martial sages in the city governor's mansion, but there was also a martial god elite. He immediately frowned and the corners of his mouth curled into a playful sneer. In the past few days, there were no martial gods guarding the cities that we attacked. Hadn't those martial god realm captains all gathered together and joined forces to ambush Luo River? Why is there a captain guarding this Huai's city? Yun Yao asked telepathically. Then what should we do? Should we kill him or not? Ji Tianxing nodded and said coldly, since we have encountered him, how can we let him go? We have not fought with a martial god elite for a long time. This is a good opportunity to practice. Alright. Yun Yao nodded in agreement, and a look of anticipation appeared in her eyes. Then the two of them split up and quickly assassinated one black armor warrior after another. In just a few minutes, the two of them had killed 10 black armor warriors. It was only then that the captain guarding the city governor's mansion realized that the situation was not good. Enemies have charged in. Prepare to fight. The captain, who was wearing silver armor, shouted angrily in the Heaven Punisher language. Immediately, the 4 surviving black-armored guards in the city lord's mansion were alarmed. They hurriedly drew their swords and halberds and rushed to the square, searching for traces of the enemy. At this moment, the silver-armored captain took out a saber and teleported to a certain attic, appearing behind Yun Yao. Yun Yao had just killed a black-armored guard. His corpse was lying on the ground and blood was seeping out. When the captain saw this, his body trembled. His eyes were filled with deep fear. Damned lowly servant, you are Luo Shui? 10 days ago he had received news that Luo Shui martial god was assassinating the experts of the Heaven Punishers in the 72 cities to create chaos. 4 captains besieged Luo Shui, but not only were they unable to kill Luo Shui, they even ended up with 3 dead and 1 injured. This person knew how terrifying Luo Shui martial god's strength was and was rather fearful. Now that they saw Yun Yao appear and saw her beautiful face, cold and noble temperament, they thought that she was Luo Shui. Naturally, they were filled with fear. However, Yun Yao remained silent and did not reply. She did not even have the intention to attack. Instead, she turned around and fled without hesitation. Swoosh! She turned into a wisp of silver-white light and streaked across the sky like lightning, fleeing out of the city. The silver-armored captain was stunned for a moment, and then his expression changed. He shouted with shame and anger, "No! She's not Luo Shui martial god." According to the information we received, Luo Shui is wearing an ice blue dress and has the strength of a level 5 martial god. This woman in white is obviously not a martial god. She's only a martial sage. As he spoke, he used a teleportation secret technique and chased after Yun Yao out of the city. "You're just a martial sage. How dare you sneak into Huai's city and assassinate my warriors? You lowly servant, you must be tired of living. If I don't tear you into pieces today, won't I become the shame and laughingstock of the entire tribe?" The silver-armored captain was blinded by anger, and monstrous murderous intent burst out from his body. He locked onto the aura of Yun Yao's spiritual soul and chased after her out of Huai's city. He was still in hot pursuit. It seemed that he would not stop until he killed Yun Yao. However, Yun Yao kept teleporting in the sky at an extremely fast speed. The silver-armored captain could not catch up with her in a short period of time. At this moment, the 4 surviving black-armored guards also chased out of Huai's city with murderous intent. However, they were intercepted by Ji Tianxing when they flew out of the city and over a mountain range. Swoosh! Ji Tianxing appeared behind them like a ghost. He raised his hand and threw out the god-slaying flying dagger. At the same time, he waved the Burial of Heaven sword and slashed out 3 huge starry swords. Boom! With a muffled explosion, one of the black-armored guards was hit by the god-slaying flying dagger. A huge bloody hole appeared in his chest and scales flew out. The man died instantly. His body fell from the sky and crashed into the mountain peak. The other 3 black-armored guards were dumbfounded when they saw their companion being killed instantly. However, they immediately came to their senses when they saw the huge starry swords slashing down on their heads. They released a sky full of bloody blades to block Ji Tianxing's attack. Bang! 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 A series of muffled explosions sounded. The bloody blades collapsed and shattered. However, the 3 huge starry swords were intact and hit them hard. The 3 of them were sent flying. A hideous wound appeared on their bodies and dark red blood gushed out. The 2 sides only exchanged 1 blow, and the 3 black-armored guards were severely injured. They were horrified and turned to flee toward Huai's city. Ji Tianxing sneered. He controlled the god-slaying flying dagger with his divine telekinesis and attacked one of the black-armored guards. Swoosh! A golden light flashed in the sky. The god-slaying flying dagger instantly pierced through the man's chest and killed him. The other 2 were even more horrified. They desperately unleashed their strongest power and sped up to escape. However, Ji Tianxing controlled the god-slaying flying dagger with his divine telekinesis and attacked the 2 of them. Swoosh! The dark golden light flashed across the sky and pierced through the 2 men's chests. It then flew back to Ji Tianxing's hand. When the 2 bodies fell from the sky and landed in the mountains, Ji Tianxing had already left. Swoosh. He traversed 100 miles with each step and chased towards the north. In just 10 breaths he had chased for thousands of miles and caught up with Yun Yao. At that moment Yun Yao and the captain of the silver-armored ship were fighting fiercely in the sky. It was not that Yun Yao had been caught. She felt that this place was far enough away from Huai's city and would not affect the innocent people. She held the shadowless dual swords in the sky and kept stabbing the captain of the silver-armored ship. The captain of the silver-armored ship sneered. His eyes were full of contempt and mockery. He had used the power of his fighting soul to form a crimson light shield that covered a radius of 300 miles. He had sealed this area. Yun Yao would not be able to escape. In his opinion, Yun Yao would not be able to escape. She would definitely die. However, when he attacked without restraint, releasing a bloody light that filled the sky towards Yun Yao, an incomparably sharp chill suddenly appeared behind him. Swoosh. Chapter 2377. Bam. A loud, muffled explosion resounded through the sky. The god-slaying flying dagger pierced into the silver-armored captain's back when he was completely unprepared. The flying dagger had been aimed at his back and was about to pierce through his chest to kill him. However, he was indeed a martial god. At the moment of life and death, his body had expanded to 3 times its original size. Although the god-slaying flying dagger had pierced through his armor and body, it had not destroyed the blood-colored scales on his chest. A large amount of dark red blood spurted out from his body and scattered across the sky. A large bloody hole had appeared in his abdomen and his organs could be seen clearly. The violent and unparalleled force of impact sent him flying. The heart-wrenching pain caused him to let out a furious roar. After he had flown 1,000 feet away, he finally stabilized himself. He suddenly turned his head to look behind him, glaring at Ji Tianqing with shock and anger. It was only then that he realized that there was more than one person who had attacked Huai's city. And that white-robed, handsome and valiant human youth was the greatest threat to his life. He had severely injured him the moment he attacked. However, as the silver-armored captain observed Ji Tianqing, his eyes narrowed and he frowned. He suddenly realized a problem. Ji Tianqing was not a martial god. He was only a martial sage. Even if Ji Tianqing was able to hide his cultivation level and aura, it would still be useless. After all, there was a fundamental difference between divine power and spiritual power. The silver-armored captain was shocked and angry. He cursed with a distorted face. D*M&B* starred. You worm, you really don't know what's good for you. In his opinion, Ji Tianqing was only a martial sage. He had used a divine-class hidden weapon to attack him and severely injure him. Now that Ji Tianqing had been exposed, he wanted to crush Ji Tianqing in a head-on manner. He would not give Ji Tianqing a chance to attack him. 4 directions flying dragon slash. The silver-armored captain roared angrily. He held his saber with both hands and slashed out a bloody ray. Suddenly, the dark red blood light turned into 24 dragon shadows, and attacked Ji Tianqing from all directions. This was one of the silver-armored captain's trump cards. It had the power to seal and kill everything. He attacked with hatred and erupted with his strongest power, not giving Ji Tianqing a chance to escape at all. He wanted to kill him with a single move. At this critical moment, Ji Tianqing's eyes were firm and fearless. He actually didn't use the chaotic heaven secret art to evade and instead chose to face it head-on. Celestial dragon tyrant body. He let out a low roar and his entire body emitted a dazzling golden light. In an instant he turned into a 30-meter-tall giant. Sword shatters the void. He gripped the sword of burial of heaven with both hands and concentrated on thrusting out 36 times, attacking the 24 blood-colored dragon shadows. 36 starlight swords bloomed, dazzling like stars surrounding the moon. The 24 gigantic crimson dragon projections also lost their luster. Bang 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 bang. The starlight swords collided with the crimson dragon projections, and there was a loud explosion that shook the universe and a destructive shock wave burst forth. The sword radiance and the dragon projections collapsed at the same time, turning into billions of light fragments. The shock wave swept across a radius of 1,000 miles. Heaven and earth instantly collapsed. Cracks appeared in the sky and densely packed gullies appeared on the ground. More than a dozen mountains and mountain ranges were razed to the ground and destroyed into ruins. Ji Tianqing and the silver-armored captain were both sent flying. They only stopped after retreating for 10 miles. The two of them stood in the sky with their backs bent, panting heavily. They were evenly matched in this exchange of blows. Neither of them had gained the upper hand. The outcome shocked the silver-armored captain, and he wore an expression of disbelief. Ji Tianxing, on the other hand, looked pleased. He was very satisfied. After all, the silver-armored captain had used all his strength, but he hadn't. The facts proved that he had the combat strength of a LV2 martial god even without using the chaotic heaven secret art and the god-slaying flying dagger. If he used his trump card, it would be easy for him to kill a LV2 martial god expert. At this moment, Yun Yao, who was ready to attack, charged out from the sky and slashed at the silver-armored captain with the shadowless sword in her hand. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. More than a dozen shadowless sword radiances with the power to slash through everything enveloped the silver-armored captain. He immediately became alert and sensed that death was imminent. He retreated without hesitation by teleporting away. Swoosh. In a flash, he retreated 100 miles away. However, the shadowless sword radiances also crossed 100 miles in the sky and hit him with a loud bang. Bang, bang, bang. The silver-armored captain was hit by the shadowless sword radiances. Blood radiance burst out from his body and he was sent flying violently. The silver-armored captain's armor completely collapsed, and it turned into countless pieces that scattered in the sky. More than a dozen wounds appeared on his chest and back. They were long, narrow, and hideous. They were so deep that his bones could be seen. He had almost been cut in half. One of his front legs had been cut off by the shadowless sword and blood was gushing out. The immense pain caused the silver-armored captain to go berserk, and he roared hysterically. At this moment, Ji Tianxing rushed up again and shouted with a cold expression, "Die!" As he spoke, he waved his hand and threw out the god-slaying flying dagger. Swoosh! A golden light pierced the sky and disappeared in a flash. The sharp god-slaying flying dagger locked onto the silver-armored captain's aura and stabbed him with unstoppable force. He sensed that death was imminent. His face was full of horror and he wanted to teleport away to avoid it. However, the god-slaying flying dagger was too fast. It was completely beyond his expectations. Bam! Amidst the dull loud noise, the god-slaying flying dagger slammed into his chest and exploded with a power that could destroy everything. The silver-armored captain's chest was instantly blasted open with a terrifying bloody hole. The dark red scales and internal organs were all blown to smithereens. Even his body was covered in dense cracks. Blood splattered everywhere. The scales were destroyed. The silver-armored captain's life was instantly cut off. His life's divine power also collapsed and dissipated. His body stiffened in the sky. His eyes stared at Ji Tianxing. His throat trembled violently. He wanted to say something. However, blood kept flowing out of his mouth and nose. He could no longer make a sound. After 2 short breaths, the scarlet flames in his eyes were extinguished. He was completely dead. Plop. The corpse fell from the sky and crashed into the ruins below. Dust flew everywhere. The corpse that was already full of cracks was also smashed into pieces. It was covered by dust and soil. The magical power that covered the sky gradually disappeared. The raging shockwaves gradually dissipated. The world gradually returned to peace. Ji Tianxing flew to Yun Yao's side and stood still. He looked at her with concern. He was only relieved when he saw that she was safe. Yun Yao understood his thoughts. She said, "Don't worry about me. I have already tested it out. With the shadowless sword in hand, I am confident that I can defeat this person within 10,000 moves. Even if he has other trump cards, I will not be defeated." Ji Tianxing nodded and smiled with relief. "It's good. If we work together, we can also quickly kill those martial god realm captains." Chapter 2378. In the center of the 72 cities' sky-reaching city, nearly 20 captains of the martial god realm gathered in the majestic and solemn city lord's mansion. Everyone gathered in the conference hall. Their expressions were somewhat ugly and their gazes were rather solemn. And Yu, who was sitting in the main seat, was also frowning and pondering. There was a hint of anger between his brows. Although it was noon and the sun was blazing outside the hall, there was a trace of heat in the air. However, the atmosphere in the conference hall was heavy and oppressive. Everyone's hearts were heavy. At this moment, a messenger guard in black armor quickly stepped into the hall. This person came to the hall and knelt down to salute. He reported to Yu, reporting to Deputy General N, "I just received news that Huai's city was attacked this morning. Captain Shi Hao, who was guarding Huai City, was killed by a mysterious powerhouse. More than a dozen elite soldiers in the city were also killed. Suddenly hearing this news, the 20 captains' bodies stiffened, revealing a strong sense of anger. However, Yu frowned, deep confusion flashed in his eyes. Huai City? It was attacked this morning? No. Huai City is in the southwest, but martial god Luo Shui has been in the eastern region these 2 days. Could it be that she ran to the southwest so quickly? The messenger guard in black armor was startled and reported truthfully, Deputy General, and in the past 5 days, 8 cities in the southwest region have been attacked. At the same time, martial god Luo Shui has been active in the eastern region. She attacked 10 cities in a row and assassinated 4 captains. After being reminded, Yu's expression changed and his eyes flashed. I understand. The mysterious powerhouse who assassinated our soldiers is not only martial god Luo Shui, but also another group of people. This group of people and martial god Luo Shui acted at the same time, but they cooperated with each other from a distance. They want to create chaos. The 20 captains in the hall all came to a sudden realization, and their faces were full of indignation. I see. No wonder I keep feeling that things are very strange. Yesterday, the messenger guard reported 2 pieces of news. In the afternoon, a city in the east was attacked, and at night, a city in the south was assassinated. When I heard the news, I felt that something was wrong. Damned humans. How dare you join forces to assassinate our soldiers? You must be tired of living. In the past half a month, 12 captains and more than 300 warriors have been killed. The soldiers of my clan are already in a state of panic. They no longer dare to defend the city alone. Deputy General, please think of a way to kill those damned bastards. Otherwise, our soldiers will continue to be killed and our morale will be greatly affected. It will be difficult for us to rule the 72 cities. Many captains were filled with righteous indignation. They were both angry and helpless. If they had a choice, they would rather fight the enemy head-on, even if they had to die on the battlefield. But now, the enemy had been lurking in the dark, sneakily attacking and assassinating. This made them unable to guard against it, and they were in a very passive position. Yu saw that the crowd was agitated and could not help but feel even more anxious. He knew very well that if he did not come up with an effective solution, the captains guarding the cities would probably abandon their cities and flee. Only when 7 or 8 captains gathered together would there be a sense of security. If 1 or 2 captains were to guard a certain city, it would be equivalent to waiting for death. This kind of feeling was really too sullen and too humiliating. After muttering to himself for a moment, Yu said with a dignified expression, "Everyone calm down. A few days ago, General Long Fu ordered us to closely monitor Luo Shui's movements. Now General Long Fu has personally come to the 72 cities and is preparing to personally deal with the Luo Shui martial god. He did not join us and is moving alone to investigate the Luo Shui martial god's whereabouts. I believe that General Long Fu will be able to kill the Luo Shui martial god in 2 or 3 days at most." Hearing this, the captain's emotions calmed down slightly. However, there were still some who raised questions and expressed their worries. "Deputy General, and if General Long Fu is going to personally deal with the Luo Shui martial god, then what about the other group of mysterious powerhouses? Even if the Luo Shui martial god is killed, there's still a group of people causing trouble." Yu hurriedly waved his hand and comforted the crowd. "The strongest humans on Xinwu continent are only the 3 martial gods. Aside from Luo Shui, the other 2 martial gods cannot possibly assassinate our clan's soldiers. Therefore, the group causing trouble in the southwest will not be too strong. Everyone, don't worry. I will now ask General Long Fu to personally lead everyone to kill that group of people." After he finished speaking, he took out a communication blood jade and sent a message to General Long Fu. Everyone looked at him expectantly and patiently waited for the news. After a few minutes, a blood light flew over from the horizon and landed in Yu's hand. It was a blood jade, and it was General Long Fu's reply. Yu hurriedly opened the blood jade and read the message within. A moment later, he revealed a gratified smile and said excitedly, "Everyone, General Long Fu is already on the move and will soon capture the Luo Shui martial god. At the same time, General Long Fu has also agreed to my suggestion. I will lead everyone to the southwest and personally kill the other group of people." After hearing the exact news, the captains felt as if a huge stone had been lifted from their hearts, and they all revealed expressions of relief. And you did not waste any time and immediately called out the names of 15 captains and led them to the southwest. The remaining 5 captains remained in Skirich City, ready to provide support at any time. In the dead of night, the world was as dark as ink. Luo Shui flew high in the sky, cutting through the night sky like a phantom as she rushed north. Tonight, her target was Evercalm City, which was 80,000 kilometers away. Over the past half a month, she had killed 10 martial god captains and more than 200 black-armored soldiers. She had contacted Ji Tianxing and exchanged information. After learning that Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao had also killed 2 captains and more than 100 black-armored soldiers, she felt gratified. As she rushed to Evercalm City, she silently calculated in her heart. Although the army of the Heaven Punisher has many people and is extremely powerful, they have only just entered the continent. However, they had only just entered Shenwu continent, and they had yet to gain a firm foothold. Before they could conquer the world, we killed 12 martial gods. Such heavy losses will definitely cause the leader of the Heaven Punisher to be infuriated and driven mad. We don't have the qualifications to face the Heaven Punisher head-on, so we can only assassinate and ambush them. If this continues, we will kill all the martial gods of the Heaven Punisher sooner or later and chase them out of Shenwu continent. When she thought of this, her conviction became even more firm, and her heart was filled with anticipation. However, in the depths of her spirit, she suddenly felt a throbbing sensation. She had a vague premonition that an ice-cold aura of death was quietly approaching. As a veteran martial god, this sudden premonition was her unique sensing ability with her god soul. This ability, which was similar to a sixth sense, was extremely mysterious and indescribable. However, she firmly believed that this premonition would not be wrong. Chapter 2379. Just as Luo Shui used her invisibility technique and merged with the night sky, swish, a dark red blood light suddenly attacked from behind, releasing a dazzling radiance in the night sky. It was a sharp blade that was 100 feet long. Although it was condensed from divine power, it was as powerful as a divine artifact. Swoosh. The night sky where Luo Shui was instantly sliced open by the blood-light blade, creating a 10,000-foot-long crack. Fortunately, Luo Shui had turned invisible and retreated in time. Otherwise, the consequences would have been unimaginable if the blood-light blade had hit her. Luo Shui, who was invisible, was in the night sky 100 miles away. Seeing the blood-light blade slash open the night sky with her own eyes, she was also shocked by the violent and unparalleled power. Her clear eyes were filled with shock and her expression became very serious. "Who is it? You actually followed me silently and used such a powerful attack to kill me? Could it be the leader of the Heaven Punishers?" She knew very well that Yu definitely did not have such strength. It was even impossible for all the captains to do so. The person who secretly attacked her was definitely stronger and had a higher status than all the captains. That person must be the leader of the Heaven Punishers. At the same time, in the night sky 800 miles away, a huge figure appeared out of thin air. This was a monster that was as big as a mountain and was half human, half beast. Its upper body was like a human's, but its lower body was like a lion's. It had 4 thick hooves. 2 black dragons stretched out from his back. Their ferocious dragon heads stretched out and opened their bloody mouths. Their ferocious might overflowed into the sky. He was the dragon subduing general. This woman does have some skills. She actually managed to dodge my soul-chasing attack. The dragon subduing general sneered. The purple flames in his eyes flickered a few times and became even more intense. Since his attack did not hit, he was sure that Luo Shui had not escaped far, so he decisively used his ultimate skill. Dragon flame covers the sky. He waved his huge dragon claws and unleashed a blood-red flame that covered the night sky in front of him. Swoosh. The blood-red flames that blotted out the sky instantly formed a huge cage, sealing the world within 1,000 miles. This area had become a world of blood and fire, controlled by the dragon-subduing general. Without a doubt, Luo Shui was unable to escape in time and was trapped by the blood-light prison. The night sky, the mountains, and the earth had all disappeared, leaving only boundless blood and fire in all directions. An incomparable suppressive force came from all directions, fiercely suppressing her. It was as if she had fallen into a quagmire. Her flying speed was halved and the circulation of her divine power was blocked. As a result, her fighting abilities were weakened by 30% and she lost her drive. Moreover, the roiling blood-red flames contained a mysterious and terrifying corrosive power. Once it came into contact with her divine power shield, it would corrode and turn black, weakening and thinning out. If she did not replenish her divine power in time, the shield would collapse and dissipate. Such a scene caused her expression to become even more unsightly, and her expression was gloomy like ice. Damn it! Is this the true power of the Heaven Punishers? She had killed 10 captains and had come into contact with the special divine power of the Heaven Punishers many times. However, the strength of those captains was too weak, and they could not fully utilize the effects and power of the special divine power. Luo Shui did not take it to heart. Now that she was trapped by General Dragon Subduing, she finally knew how strange and powerful the Heaven Punishers were. Whoosh! However, she was not afraid. Her body lit up with dazzling ice blue light, forming an oval ball of light. Weak water ice heart technique. Ice blue water flowed quickly in the ball of light, releasing a power that could purify everything. The blood flames that surged from all directions were all dispersed and extinguished when they came into contact with the water blue ball of light. The pressure on Luo Shui was greatly reduced. She hurriedly took out the reverse water divine sword and warily observed her surroundings. At this moment, a mocking sneer sounded from the blood fire behind her. Kik. Martial God Luo Shui, I finally found you. The sinister voice was as unpleasant and piercing as dry tree bark rubbing against each other. Moreover, General Dragon Subduing was speaking the human language and his accent was very strange. Luo Shui suddenly turned around and looked coldly at him. Seeing his appearance, Luo Shui frowned and said with disdain, as expected of an evil demon of the foreign race. Even your appearance is so ugly and disgusting. General Dragon Subduing was not angry. He looked as if he had a card up his sleeve. He sneered and said, don't compare my race with the lowly demon race. They are not worthy. My race is the strongest race that conquers the heavens and dominates tens of thousands of worlds. We have the most outstanding bloodline in the world. Besides that, I'm a renowned and handsome great hero in the grand world of heaven treason, and I've charmed countless women. You despise me because I am ugly. You can only blame your lowly bloodline for not knowing how to appreciate me. General Dragon Subduing's tone was very confident and calm. It was as if he was telling the truth and had no intention of defending himself. This made Luo Shui frown even more and the disdain in her eyes deepened. Kikik. Even an ugly monster like you can be called handsome and handsome? You Heaven Punishers women have a distorted sense of beauty. I pity you Heaven Punishers even more. How ugly are you? Luo Shui's disdain were real and not exaggerated at all. General Dragon Subduing had conquered the heavens and was used to seeing the reactions of powerhouses from various races, but he was still infuriated by Luo Shui's attitude. He no longer discussed this matter and instead said with a sinister smile, Martial God Luo Shui, you have wantonly assassinated my soldiers in my territory. I have been tracking you for 7 days. Tonight I have finally caught you and I am not here to bicker with you. I have heard that you are as beautiful as a fairy on this continent, and you are known as the world's #1 beauty. Although I am unable to appreciate you, only the world's #1 beauty is worthy of my status. After all, I am the ruler of this continent and this world. You only have 2 choices now. You can either be mercilessly killed by me, or you can obediently submit and become my concubine. General Dragon Subduing's tone was unyielding and domineering, and he adopted a lofty attitude as he looked down on Luo Shui. In his eyes, Luo Shui was weak and could not escape from his grasp. Luo Shui immediately raised her eyebrows, and a disdainful sneer appeared at the corner of her mouth. Her tone was icy as she said, since you have already learned the human language and have some understanding of Shenwu continent, then you should have learned my ancestors' language. Then you should have learned an old saying of my clan, a toad lusting after a swan's meat. I may not be a noble swan, but you are definitely that ugly toad. General Dragon Subduing did not fully understand her words.